All right, what's going on, guys? We're here. We are live. Welcome to a brand new Poker Live podcast. My name is Jose Ingram, one aka Chicago Joey, joined today by a young gentleman who we never quite had a gentleman like this guy on, because there's always all these questions people have for poker sites. How do they decide on the rake? How do they look at players? What about seating script? What about all these things? And there's really no one you can ever ask and get an answer. But our guest today is a guy that we can ask and maybe get some answers. He's been he writes a blog that I first came in sort of just to notice him for Microgaming Poker Network. He writes a great blog about all these different things related to valuing poker players, the rake, seating scripts, and a bunch of other good stuff. And him and the PR company over at Microgaming were gracious enough to let him come on the podcast today. And his name is Alex Scott. What's going on, Alex? Welcome to the podcast, buddy.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Was that a good enough? Was that a good intro? Is that going to make the PR people happy? Shout to Anna. Is that going to make them happy at Microgaming, or are we going to have to watch what we say on the podcast?
Yeah, they'll be super happy with that.
All right, good. I don't want to. I know Microgaming's they're a pretty big company, so I don't want to make them upset and say anything that might get you fired or anything like that. So,
well, fingers crossed they don't get fired in the next 2 hours. For those who don't know, me and Joe had a conversation with our PR department and went over the ground rules, no criticizing competitors, that kind of thing. So I'll see if I can stick to them. I've got a pretty big mouth, so.
Wait a sec. We can't criticize competitors here? No.
Well, you can. I can't. You can criticize them as much as you like.
Why would I have a reason to criticize competitors? Come on, they're doing a great job. They're doing a great job, Alex. We have no reason to criticize them. But yeah, I think that was a pretty good intro by yourself. Why don't you tell people a little bit about your background? Because you've been involved in the poker industry in some form now for a little over 10 years, I believe.
I've been in the business for 11 years. I've been playing poker since I was 16. I'm a bit of an old school guy, really. I mean, actually, I've got something here which illustrates how old school I am, which is I have on my bookshelf here a copy of Gambling Theory and Other Topics by Mason Malmuth.
Wow, shout out to my boy Mason. Mason's gonna like this plug.
only a proper geek would have this, and in fact, I'm probably the only person in the Isle of Man to own this book. Maybe even the entire British Isles. So there we go. That's the kind of that's how long I've been around.
So what, you were reading that book at 16 years old?
Not quite 16, no. But I started getting into poker seriously when I was at university in Edinburgh, and we had a poker society, and me and two other guys set up this poker society and arranged basically like a big home game at the student union every week. And I was reading every poker book I could get my hands on. I mean, it was back in the day when you couldn't order poker books from Amazon UK. You had to get them from Amazon.com, so they had to come all the way from America to the UK. So yeah, this book probably cost me about £40.
Yeah, so that was probably what, back in like
a lot of money for that book, believe me. If anyone wants, this book is so old, it's probably an antique actually. So if anyone wants to make me an offer, feel free.
I can't say that about Mason. Mason's 30 years old to me, so he must have wrote that book 5 years ago.
Well,
I can't. Mason's a young guy at heart. I had Mason on the podcast a couple times. He's a young man at heart.
Well, there's something topical actually in one of his books. I think I have them all. There's Poker Essays Volume 3 up there as well. And in one of these books, he talks about the four-color deck. And there's talk of introducing that at the moment, isn't there, at the WSOP, bringing four-color deck in this year.
I hope so, because four-color deck.
He argues against it.
Yeah, his argument great.
From way before online poker was big and sort of made four-color deck standard. But his argument is that if you can, let's say you catch a glimpse of somebody's card, and you can just see the color, now you're getting more information, more of an advantage than you would have got before. An interesting argument. I'm still in favor of the four-color deck, but I haven't seen anyone talk about that recently.
That actually is interesting. I haven't really heard anyone debate for or against it. I know PokerStars, maybe. I don't know. Can we mention them? I'm not sure. But I know they tried it out at one of their things at a recent event, and it seemed like it went pretty well. But I hadn't thought about that side of things, and that if you see a card, then you know exactly what suit it is.
Yeah, I'm in favor of it. And to be honest, online, I don't know a single person who plays online without a four-color deck. It's just so standard. In fact, we've made it the default on MPN.
That's
our
pretty
software.
cool. Well,
So,
go over real quick the backstory of yourself. So, because you've been involved in the industry, in terms of how did you get to be the head of poker at Microgaming?
okay. So I started out in, it would have been 2005. So I was still at university, and I was, or I just left university, and I was promoting the World Poker Tour's new online site to students in the Edinburgh area. And that was my first job in the industry. Really liked it. And I kind of made the decision that because I was playing online a lot at the time and trying to make a living playing online and trying to play live tournaments and stuff like that, I kind of made the decision that I needed a proper job, something that would actually pay the bills, quite reliably. So I made a decision to get some sort of job. But I thought, do you know what? I'm going to have a stab at getting a job in the poker industry because it sounds really interesting, and I'd still be able to play on the side, and I'd actually learn how to play better and so on. So that was the idea. That's how I ended up with doing WPT Online, it was called. And then after a few months doing that, I applied for a job in support at PokerStars. Got that job. Spent 4.5 years at Stars, working my way up through the ranks there. Towards the end of that, I was doing a lot of design for new software features for their poker client. Like when Sit and Go Rematch came out, for example, on Stars, I designed that. And I got really into that aspect of things because at university I studied IT, and we learned to go through the software development life cycle, and we learned, it was basically what I'd been doing at university crossed with poker, which was really interesting for me. So I wanted to do more of that. And at the time, the site which had like all the best software features and was doing all of the interesting things when it came to software development was Full Tilt. So I really wanted to go work there, and I had an opportunity to go work there. Yet little did I know that they were great at software development, but not so good at the finances. So I moved there. I actually ended up starting work 2 months to the day before Black Friday. So extremely bad timing. And I actually stayed there for about 1.5 years in total. And we spent most of that time talking about how we were going to relaunch the site, coming up with new software ideas. Like I was really into other forms of poker, like not just Nolan Hold'em. So one of my things was, we've got to have as many games as possible. That would be one way that we differentiate ourselves. So I did some of the designs for things like 5-Card Stud, which came out shortly thereafter. Now, had I known that hardly anybody was going to play after the relaunch, we never would have done 5-Card Stud. But it was such a no-brainer when you've got the second largest liquidity in the world. So, so that was that. And when Stars bought Full Tilt, they let me go at that time. Harsh, but what can you do? So I moved back to the Isle of Man with my girlfriend at the time, who became my fiance just before we moved back, and started working for Microgaming a couple of months after that. And then within a year, I was head of poker. The head of poker at the time moved on. She's now running the consulting arm of Microgaming, which is called Pegasus Gaming Solutions. Very cool little company. And I took over as head of poker. So I've been head of poker for about just over 2 years now.
I like that story. I like that story, Poppy. It's a good story.
Oh, there's enough detail in that for you.
That was definitely a lot of detail. That's a good story. So, head of poker, 2 years. What does that mean? So most people, they hear head of poker. What exactly are you doing most of the time then?
Pretty much everything to do with poker comes to me, or I'm involved in it somehow. Like obviously one of the big things we do is development of the software client. Now somebody else heads up that development, but I'm obviously involved in it pretty closely on a day-to-day basis. Also stuff like game integrity. Again, someone else heads up game integrity, but I'm dealing with that on a day-to-day basis as well. New sales, get involved in a lot of new sales. We've got a big pipeline of new operators to come on board the network this year. We've had some good ones go live recently, actually. PKR went live in March, for example. That was a big one for us. So yeah, new sales is a big one. Dealing with the customers on a day-to-day basis, managing cash needs and tournaments, doing analysis of the Rake, analysis of the fees on sit and goes and tournaments, and pretty much everything. And I actually really like that variety. I need variety in my job. I think that's one of the reasons I like doing software features, because you are always working on something different from, one project to the next. One project might be sit and go rematch, the next project might be multi-currency for the entire site, that kind of thing. That variety was interesting for me. You're always learning about something new and always getting involved in something different. So yeah, I like the variety of my job at the moment.
So one thing I want to feature on just right away, what you just mentioned, which is the rake. Now, us in the poker world have been led to believe it's impossible for a poker site to last, exist, and make any money for anybody with a low rake. Now, it seems like Microgaming is taking a different approach to the rake at the lower stakes and micro stakes cash games, which, I'm a primarily a cash game player. So for me and for most people that watch the podcast, those are the games that we like to play. And this is really the first thing that really made me want to say, wow, I wanted to learn more about the site, is that the rake at 1 cent, 2 cent, 2 cent, 4 cent, 5 cent, 10 cent, 10 cent, 25 cent, 25 cent, 50 cent is so much lower than all the other sites that are basically existing. Now, how can you guys possibly still be operating as a poker site and be charging such small rake at those stakes? How is it possible, Alex? I just have to know. I don't understand how it's possible.
Okay, right. So if you think of rake, and you can charge, let's say you can charge the maximum possible rake. You can charge 100% rake of every pot, right? No one's going to play that game, are they? And you're not going to make any money, right? 100% rake, no one's going to play. On the other hand, 0% rake, as many people as possible will play, but you're going to go out of business because you can't make any money. You can't cover your costs. So somewhere in the middle, there's a sweet spot where you're charging just enough to make money, or you're making the maximum amount of money. Actually, you're making the the optimal amount of money, but players are willing to play and willing to pay that amount, and that sweet spot is what we've been looking for with this new reg structure. Previously, I think we were charging too much, and the theory behind this new reg structure, which comes from actually several years ago, we had this idea, came up in what we call our network management board, which is where we get together with the biggest operators on the network, and we discuss like the future of the network and development roadmap and how we're going to optimize the games and things like that. And this idea came out of that network management board meeting, and actually one of the operators from that network management board has gone off on their own, and they've done a very similar thing. But the idea is that, particularly at the lower stakes, if you charge people a relatively small amount of money to play, then they're more likely to have a good experience, which means they're more likely to come back, and they're more likely to move up in stakes as well. So the two benefits of that is, one, you get this rising of people from the lower stakes to the medium stakes to the higher stakes, and obviously you make more money at the medium stakes than the higher stakes, so that's where you want people to be. But also you extend the lifetime of players. So what we've seen actually since we've changed to this rate structure, we're making more money. First couple of days we were down slightly, but we're making more money now after introducing this rate structure. And players are lasting longer. In fact, they're lasting just over 13 hours longer than they were before. Like their lifetime is 13 hours longer than it was before. So this has been, I mean, I wish we'd made this change years ago. I really do. At the same time, so people are paying us more. I want to be clear about that. They're paying us more, but they're getting to play so many more hands over their career, over their lifetime with us. They're having a much better experience. It's much better value for them. So they come back more, they deposit again, and that's had a really healthy effect on our numbers. And we're one of the few networks out there which is growing year on year. Last couple of weeks we've grown week on week as well. It's a good time for us, and I really wish we'd made this change sooner.
Now, I actually have an image, and I don't show images often, but I'm going to show an image. I have a side-by-side comparison of the rate, because I actually want to show people what I mean. We haven't really said numbers. It's kind of hard for people to, maybe exactly understand exactly what I mean by this when we're talking about the rake. So I'm going to show this image right here. Hopefully it's not something out of line. Okay, so here's a side-by-side comparison for people out there. The left-hand side is Microgaming rake. The right-hand side is pretty standard. It's a PokerStars rake. Now I'm going to take the 5 cent, 10 cent limit, for example. So 5 cent, 10 cent, and you actually, so you have it a lot lower. So if there's only 2 players in, the rake is, substantially lower at all stakes. I think it's up to 1-2 for the most part. And then 3 to 4 players, the cap's lower. And then 5 players or more, you have 3 big blinds. So now 5 cent, 10 cent. The cap for you guys is 30 cents. On Stars, the 5 cent, 10 cent cap is, I took the Euro games because they're in Euro. It's at $1.25. So $1.25 cap and a 30 cent cap. Now, I have some numbers here I wrote down just to give people some like context exactly. So over 100 hands of you playing that hit the cap, you'd be losing $83 total from the table. On Stars, you'd be losing $30 per table on Microgaming. That's over 100 hands at 5 cent, 10 cent. Over 1,000 hands, that's $830 and $300. That are so the difference at just 5 cent, 10 cent in terms of buy-ins is massive. Now I want to go to 25 cent, 50 cent. So assuming it's five players or more, the cap on at 25 cent, 50 cent for you guys is $1.50. I think I actually did that one wrong. Oh well, whatever. For the micro stakes one, and for 2 cent, 1 cent, 2 cent, 2 cent, 5 cent, 5 cent, 10 cent, and 10 cent, 25 cent, it's a lot lower. And then 25 to 50 cent, I mean, I guess you're only saving 30 cents at the cap here, but that still adds up over time too. And all those small bits really add up in terms of your overall big blind per 100 over a longer sample size. And that's all I want to show. I'm actually going to write something really, really more in depth about this entire thing and then break down some of the reward system as well too for people out there. And I'll post that sometime. It'll be on my Twitter or on my site or whatever. But yeah, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, that's great to see. I mean, we've obviously done some analysis of our own. In fact, before we did the changes, we had to justify them. We had to model them because it was a big risk for us to take to drop rate this much. I mean, we were charging much more than the market leader previously. So we did some modeling, and we took 1 million hands that had actually played on the MPN, 1 million Hold'em and Omaha hands, and these were hands that went to the flop, so hands that were actually raked. And we calculated what they would have been raked on Microgaming before, Microgaming afterwards, and various other competitors of ours. And we wanted to be competitive with the cheapest, and yet we also wanted to come up with a structure that would that wouldn't cost us too much if it went wrong, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So we did some modeling, and it turns out that the theory we thought we would extend player lifetimes, and we thought we would see people moving up in stakes. That theory is absolutely proven to be correct. And I'm not saying that we've got it right. You know, in the short term, we're charging a lot less than some competitors. In the long term, people stick around longer and they pay us more. But in the short term, they pay less to us. I'm not saying that's necessarily the right solution, and we probably will tweak this some more in the future. We'll do a lot more research, and we'll try some things. And we'll try and optimize it as much as possible. That's our job at the end of the day. But yeah, I'm very happy with the results so far. And I think if you are wanting to start out, especially in a game like Omaha, where so many pots are raked, and well, not only are so many pots raked, but so many pots are raked a lot because of the size of the pots. If you're wanting to start out in a game like that, you're probably going to do much better on the MPN than you might do elsewhere. We're going to charge you a lot less for the privilege of starting your Omaha career.
For sure, especially at the stakes below 25 cent and 50 cent. But so at 50 cent dollar, you have a higher cap than most sites do. Why did you guys decide to go with a higher cap for 50 cent dollar, 1-2, and 4-2-4?
Well, frankly, we've always had that cap. We've always had the €3 cap at that level. And when we were designing the new structure, we wanted to pass on the savings at the lower stakes, and we didn't want to. At the same time, we didn't want to risk costing ourselves, hundreds of thousands of euros. So we just left that as it was, and we didn't really consider reducing that or increasing that too much. The one spot where we did increase it from previously was higher stakes, heads up, and heads up was a very difficult one, really, to be honest, because if you look at heads up, there's basically 2 kinds of heads up games that happen. There's reg on reg action, which is rare, frankly. Hardly ever happens because regs know each other and they don't want to play each other heads up. They only want to play the new guy who doesn't know what he's doing. And that's the other type of game where you've got a reg and a new guy who doesn't know what he's doing. And what happens in that game is the new guy just loses all of his money really, really quickly to the reg and hardly pays any rake in that time at all. So heads-up games turned out to not be very profitable for us at all. It's only really when you have the reg-on-reg action that they are profitable, that they do generate a lot of rake. But that kind of action wasn't happening anyway. So we felt that those games were a little bit underrated for us, and we wanted to make them a commercial success. They weren't a commercial success before, and to be blunt, it was basically, do we get rid of these games because they're not particularly good for the ecology either. When somebody's coming online and they're losing their entire deposit in the course of a few hands, that's not a good experience. So we considered just removing them altogether, but we thought, if we increase the charge in the high stakes heads up game, then we might actually make a better commercial success out of them. If we're able to do that, then we'll look at other ideas for heads up as well. I've got some good ideas for what we can do with heads up in the future. If we can find a way to make it a commercial success, then we will. I'm not really keen to just get rid of it. I know other people have just got rid of it, but I mean, heads up is a cool game when it's not just people being predators, when people aren't predating on the weak. It's a really cool game, and it's one of the purest forms of poker. I do enjoy playing heads up, even though I'm not very good at it, frankly. I do enjoy it. And I wouldn't want to take that away from people necessarily.
Yeah, one of the questions we got was from I hear a little. I hear myself. Ooh. All right, some Sios on 2+2. He said, "I like that Micro did King of the Hill, but why did he increase the rake, disincentivizing people to battle on his site?" Which you sort of just answered. Basically, there wasn't enough battling really happening in those games. It
basically didn't happen, and so we weren't making any money from heads up. And it was a case of, do we get rid of it or do we give it a try? But we try and make some money out of it, and that's the idea. And I know we're not going to please everybody with this, but by raising the rake at heads up, we were able to lower it elsewhere. It was the part of the balancing act that we made. So we think overall this new structure is better. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying that we can't improve it, but I think it's significantly better than it was before, and I think it's probably one of the best in the industry, actually.
All right, questions from the chat. Derminator said, "Have you joined Microgaming as their brand ambassador?" I have not, but I get the question so much from people saying that play micro stakes, PLO, and not really micro stakes, NL. We mainly enjoy PLO around here. And they always say, where's the best site to play? And I never really recommend a site because the rake's so damn high. But on here, the rake is significantly lower to the point where I think it's the best option, probably up to 25 cent, 50 cent, just from in terms of rake. It's probably the best option to play other than PokerStars. You're in the USA. I mean, you got fucked anyway. But so that's sort of why that's why I'm talking about that. Mark Kennedy, what's up, puppy? Says, what's the percentage though? Because they don't hit the cap that often at 10 NL. So 10 NL, for instance, Mark, the cap, let's say on an all-in pot between 200 big blind stacks, the cap would be 90 cents they take from that pot. And whereas on Microgaming, they would take 30 cents from that pot. So it's a 60-cent difference from just 100 big blind versus 100 big blind all in. And I know my friend Mark's a very smart guy. He can do the math from there. And
yeah, the percentage rake is 5%. It's 5% everywhere. We don't change it for each stake. We do change the cap for each stake. So when it's full ring, we charge 3 big blinds basically at the the cap is 3 big blinds, so it's up to 3 big blinds at the smaller stakes. If it's 3 or 4 players dealt in, we charge 2 big blinds, and if it's 2 players dealt in, we charge 1 big blind as the cap. So it's 5% up to that amount.
Yeah, but the 5% is a little bit higher compared to some of the other sites. Some other sites, their percentage is a little bit lower too.
Yeah, absolutely. But we've made up for that with the cap. So we're not disincentivizing people from playing larger pots. We want people to play larger pots. Larger pots are more fun, frankly. Why would you disincentivize people from playing big pots?
Well, okay. So a common thing I hear is that people at those stakes maybe don't know about the rake.
Sorry, you cut out there, Joe.
From what some people say is that there are certain players who play those stakes that don't necessarily even know what the rake means, know how the rake affects them, or even care about the rake. They just sort of want to play. But I'm pretty sure that's not true, and I'm pretty sure from your numbers you've seen that that's not true as well.
Well, people might not care about the rake. Lots of people don't care about the rake. I mean, when I play poker, I don't care about the rake. Frankly, I'm a recreational player these days. I'm not trying to maximize my rake back. I'm just playing for enjoyment at the end of the day. And you know, the difference between 5% and 4.5% means nothing to me. But what people do notice, they notice if they're lasting half an hour or if they're lasting 45 minutes when they sit down to play. They notice that. And particularly in the first session, it's really, really important that people have a decent experience. It doesn't have to be you know, mind-blowing experience that first time. In fact, there's some evidence that suggests that it shouldn't be a mind-blowing experience because that gives people unrealistic expectations for the future. But you don't want them to have a terrible experience either. And one way they can have a terrible experience is if they sit down and all of their money just disappears to rake, you know, and they just get blinded away. How fun is getting blinded away for half an hour? You know, limp into a few pots, play a few flops, your money gets drained away. How fun is that? You know, we want people to last a little bit longer, particularly in those first few sessions. And that's why it's so much cheaper at micro stakes. People start their poker career at micro stakes, and we want that start to be good. We want it to be enjoyable for people.
How does the rake for your sit and goes or for your tournaments, how does that compare? Because I didn't really see that anywhere, and I'm not super familiar with rake for tournaments or for sit and goes on most sites. So
we've recently revamped the rake for sit and goes as well. And after the success of reducing the cash game rake, we did it for sit and goes as well. So we've reduced it at many stakes. So for Heads Up Super Turbo, for example, the rake varies from 10% down to 2%, depending on the stakes that you're playing. So for example, the €1,000 buy-in, the fee is €20 or 2%. It's a little bit more expensive for turbo, a little bit more expensive for regular speed. So like, for example, Heads Up Regular goes from 10% to 4%. Full Ring Super Turbo goes from 10% down to 5%, depending on the stake that you're playing. So again, we revamped that, and we're busy analyzing that actually for our next network management board meeting, and we'll see if that's been successful or not.
I guess so. What's like the goal as you have head of poker? Is your goal to take as much money from the players as you possibly can and limit the amount of people withdrawing money from the site as much as you can? Or is that not, because that seems like some sites' goal these days. So I'm not sure if that's an industry standard or if that's just potentially some strategy. Some sites have this strategy, some sites have a strategy this way.
So we want to make money. We're a company, and you know, the goal of being in business is to make money and to make as much money as you possibly can. So yes, we want to make money. I'm going to be blunt about that. Of course we do. We're a business, but at the same time, we've got to make money in a sustainable way. The goal is not to just take as much money in the short term as possible. And you know, some people, for example, have looked at this, and the head of poker at another network spoke to me a few months ago and told me this. He said they're trying to make as much money from poker players in the short term as possible and then convert them to casino. That's what this guy told me. Now, we're not trying to do that. We're trying to make as much money from poker in the long term as we can. And that means it's got to be sustainable. You can't charge people too much in the short term because they'll never come back.
Right.
So we've tried to come up with something which is a nice middle ground between over-raking and under-raking. You know, over-raking to the point where people just don't survive or don't enjoy the experience, and under-raking to the point where you don't make any money. You know, it's a balancing act, and I think we're on the right track. I'm not saying we're perfect, like I said, but I think we're on the right track with it.
Yeah, that's sort of the way I've looked at it. Is if the people keep playing, if they keep coming back, you're going to end up making money from them much more over a longer period of time. But it seems like a lot of people are so short-term focused right now, and maybe they see poker, you know, just everything changing. Maybe the bots are going to take over, but it seems like that they're just trying to take as much money now. More people are quitting and quitting and quitting, but I guess they don't view that as a bad thing. And I don't know how that would be in the long term. I mean, do you see poker online still being played in 5 years, or are you scared about the legislation in other countries catching up and the bots taking over and things of that nature?
I do, but at the same time, I am scared. And I remember the time that I first got scared about the future of poker. I remember it really vividly. And I was playing. Do you remember Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2?
I think my little bro played that. I don't ever play those games. I just played poker all day long back then, so I never got into the first-person shooters. Luckily,
I'm into video games as well. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 came out, and there was one mission in that, in the single-player campaign, and I was watching it, and I was playing it rather, and my mind was just blown. You know, this was a game with millions of dollars being pumped into the budget, and this is what poker is competing against. And if you look now, in one of the recent Call of Duties, they paid Kevin Spacey $1 million to just do voiceovers in a Call of Duty game. $1 million. That's what they're investing in these games. They are multi-billion, well, I don't want to say billion, maybe not billion, but certainly multi-million-dollar industries now, as is poker. But this is what we're competing against. We're competing against a really immersive experience. Because at the end of the day, poker is entertainment for the vast majority of people. It's entertainment, and we're competing against all other forms of entertainment. We're competing against Hearthstone, against Call of Duty, against Candy Crush, games like that. And you know, we can't allow the industry to fall into a state where people would rather play Call of Duty than play poker, or they'd rather play Hearthstone than play poker. And yet, I think a lot of the people that are turning 18 now, you know, they're exposed to Call of Duty and Hearthstone, and you know, maybe you look at the interface for an online poker site and it doesn't look quite as impressive as Hearthstone, or well, maybe Hearthstone, but certainly not as impressive as Call of Duty or the new Doom game or something like that. Mm-hmm. You know, and I can see people not considering poker at all, and I think that's one of the reasons why we have to change. We have to move with the times. We have to upgrade our software and our product to be more relevant for today. And we have to make sure that people who are, you know, coming of age are interested in poker. Because 10 years ago, when my generation, well, okay, 16 years ago, when my generation was coming of age, we were interested in poker. Poker was cool, and if you downloaded an online poker site, the kind of quality of experience and the thrill that you could get from that was on a par with the kind of thrills that you could get from other online gaming, you know, and other entertainment that was available to you at the time. Now we've got Netflix, and we've got Call of Duty Black Ops 3, you know, and we are competing against those for the entertainment time and entertainment spend of people. So we really need to up our game over the next few years. Otherwise, people will just do other things with their time.
Yeah, well, so I know you're into software design and software, just thinking of new ideas. Why do you think that every site has basically copied the same model in terms of software? As you mentioned, you know, these other games look a certain type of way, and it seems like all the sites, all of the software is pretty much the exact same thing. You have the options to bet, check, and raise down in the bottom right. The table's right here. The chat's right here. Why do you think we haven't seen, I mean, I guess now with GPL to an extent, I suppose, but why do you think we haven't seen a new presentation for actual software that sites use?
Yeah, I actually don't know the answer to this one. I really don't, but I have tried to design a new poker table from scratch before. I was working on a social game a couple of years ago, which still hasn't come out. Hopefully it does. It's a really great game. And we were trying to design a poker table from scratch, and part of the mandate was just, you know, throw away, forget about what you know from online poker already. You know, that might be wrong, it might not be optimal. So think, you know, blue sky, clean sheet, think about what an online poker table could look like. And we drew out a few, and we settled on one that looks almost exactly like a current online poker table. It's just, there is a design in there for a reason. Some things work best. You know, if you put the flop the bottom left of the screen, for example, it just doesn't work. You know, there are certain things that work better than other things, and certain things that just don't work at all. And as it turns out, I think probably the design of the current poker table is pretty close to optimum. There are some exciting things you can do with it. I don't know, have you seen the HTC Vive? Can you imagine what they can do with that? With virtual reality.
Oh.
Virtual reality gaming mixed with poker. Can you imagine where that's going to go in the next 5 or 10 years? That's so exciting. It really is. And that's the kind of thing, actually, that we've got to think about next. I don't think, you know, tweaking the interface in subtle ways is really going to make a big difference. I don't think that's going to be the next game changer. But something like virtual reality poker. That's really interesting.
You know, one of my favorite features about online poker right now is when you win a certain pot over a big blind threshold, it rains money down at the table. Or when you make, and I'm gonna shout out a site, American site that I don't recommend anyone play on, because you never know, like, what etc, obviously disclaimers to that. But when you make a strong hand on the river, like, lightning bolts your cards. I mean, I'm sure like, if I like that and I'm a professional, I'm sure the recreational players like that too. They like want to see the money rain down. Does Microgaming do stuff like that on the skins? Can we expect to see Thunderbolt?
We don't, actually. We don't at the moment. Although PKR, who have just joined our network, they've got their own software. They do some pretty cool stuff like that. Like, you win a tournament, rains cash from the ceiling. And,
yeah, exactly. I don't know, man. I find that, but I just find that cool. I don't know. I'm just like, I think, yeah, I don't know. I find that cool. I think Stars might have done something in maybe some recent tournaments where, like, if you knock someone out, it does some sort of animation or something like that. I don't know, but
I do like that, and I can see that appealing to people. Thing is, from a product development side of things, it's so hard to justify, because you're always trying to think about the ROI of your development. So, you know, the ROI for jackpot sit and goes, for example, that's an easy one. You know, that's easy to justify. The ROI for adding a lightning bolt on the river, how do you justify that? You know, that's much harder.
Yeah, I guess it's terms of, if you're gonna have people spend time and pay them money to put these hours in on a project, and you sort of want to be able to have some sort of concrete reasoning or evidence in terms of how exactly that's going to benefit the company, and from a monetary standpoint.
Every poker company I've worked for, we've had a list of ideas, hundreds of items long, right? And in any given year, we can do maybe 5 or 10 of those ideas. So here at Microgaming, we've got hundreds of ideas in the pipeline, ready to go. We just, you know, we need the dev time and the resource to actually get them done. And it was the same everywhere I've worked in the past. Just gotta pick 1 or 2 of those things to do at a time.
My buddy David Huber in the chat, one of the best poker writers in the world, says coolest things when I started playing in 2004 was the customizable drink and food orders at Paradise Poker. Does that exist? Can you get
that existed. I remember that.
Really? You could get a margarita and some quesadillas or something like that to your table. I didn't even know. Wow.
One of my most frustrating poker experiences of my entire life was at Paradise Poker back in the day. They were running, I think it was $1 million free roll, and you had to qualify for that free roll in a number of, like, satellite free rolls. And I seem to remember there was like a 10,000 player free roll or something, and 1,000 players made it into the next stage, and I finished 1,001st. It was so frustrating.
feels bad, man. Feels bad. Bad beat story. I felt like that was a bad beat story waiting to happen right there.
Oh yeah, sorry. There won't be any more of those.
Okay, let's see what we got on the list. We got a bunch of things we always wanted to ask these poker sites out here. So one big thing that I think is, I know it's a worry at the PLO games right now, and it has to be a worry at the NOLAM games, is the situation about bots. Now, I know the Eastern European, shout out to them. They're working hard at concocting these bots that were allegedly winning a large amount of money at games on PokerStars. And from your point of view, how are you, I know you don't want to give away strats, but how are you able to detect these bots? Do you think that they're a real threat? And do you think there's really anything you can do against smarter bots out there?
Yeah, I mean, certainly they are a threat, and it's something that does worry me. At the moment, it's kind of like an arms race. So we've invested a lot in getting better at detecting bots and colluders over the last couple of years. We've got real-time alerts now that pop up, you know, the second something suspicious happens, for our poker integrity team to investigate. But yeah, it's an arms race. You know, we will implement something that makes it easier to detect bots, and then they will finally figure out how to get past some previous form of detection. So we'll have to come up with something new. You know, we get better, that forces them to get better. They get better, so we get better again, and so on. It's kind of a never-ending thing. But we are much better at detecting bots than we used to be, and actually, all we really need to do from our company perspective anyway is to just get good enough that they'll go somewhere else. You know, it'll be more profitable for them to play somewhere else. And I think we're close to that point now. We're, like I said before, you know, we're definitely not perfect, but we're on the right track there. Bots are getting good though. It does worry me a bit. We've caught bots in the past that have won. I would say 25 cent, 50 cents, that kind of level, which is worrying. You know, that is worrying definitely. And I think what we'll see over time is some games just will probably die off because of the risk from bots. Like, for example, heads up fixed limit hold'em, it's pretty much already dead, right? Partly that's because it's just not that exciting a game.
I don't want to send shots at any limit hold'em players out there, but I mean, come on.
Sorry about that, limit hold'em players.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we already know that bots are winning on some of the hardest games right now in PLO on PokerStars. There were the biggest 1-2 winners last year were a lot of them were bots, and they were playing a little bit higher stakes as well too. So if we know that there's bots out there capable of winning in those games for such a long period of time, you'd almost be naive to think that those bots don't exist on all the other sites too.
Yeah, they probably do. Although the incentive for them to play on sites on a network like the MPN, for example, you know, we've fewer games running than the market leader, and you know, less players to play against. So there is much less of an incentive for them to you know, to optimize their software to work on the MPN. There's obviously a massive incentive for them to optimize their software to work on the market leader. So that does benefit us to a certain extent. But you know, we do tackle bots every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
It does happen, and we have to deal with it as best we can. We have to refund as many players as we can with as much money as we possibly can. So we try and deal with each case on a case-by-case basis and come up with the fairest solution in each one.
Yeah, I think people always wondered, how are refunds handled in that situation? How do they decide who gets what money, who gets money at all, or who doesn't get any money?
Well, pretty much everyone who's been negatively affected would get something. So one of the difficulties in bot cases is that the way that you detect bots, or one of the ways that you detect bots, kind of relies on a large number of hands having been played.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very difficult to detect a bot within 5 hands played, for example. It's very easy after 500,000 hands. The problem is, after 500,000 hands, a lot of damage has been done. So, you know, bot cases can be very difficult to calculate the refunds in situations like that. And yeah, I mean, we try and do the fairest thing in each case, and we try and make sure that the people who are negatively affected get as much money back as possible. Some people do win against the bots, of course. In fact, most people do. Most bots make money via reward schemes, you know, by getting rake back. They play a sort of break-even strategy overall, but then they get a huge amount of rake back because they play a huge amount of hands. So there are many people who win against bots, and obviously we wouldn't refund someone who won against the bot. They've already won. There's nothing to refund. Yeah,
I think the bots probably make money from the weaker regulars and the fun players. You know, so some of the sites that I play on now, I'm very confident that there may be certain accounts that are bots in the games, but I know that they're bots. I sort of can pick up their patterns. I can pick up their play style, and I feel like I'm beating the bots. So, but I also I want to report them too, because I feel like that they are actually bots. But at the same time, you know, I mean, I'm not even sure if the sites will do something about that though. So it's I like the challenge of bots personally, which is kind of weird, but yeah, I like playing against them. I think they're also easy to play against after a certain period of time too. They might be watching this. Maybe they're going to.
More robotic in their style, I've heard. But I mean, in all seriousness, the chances are, you being a player in the games, it would be very difficult for you to spot a genuine bot from a human player, unless that bot was very unsophisticated. You know, a sophisticated bot wouldn't show typical bot tendencies. You know, it wouldn't be sitting there not chatting for 24 hours sessions and that kind of stuff. That's you know, 10 years ago kind of stuff. It would be quite difficult for a human player to spot the difference now. I genuinely believe that.
I don't want to get any bot strategy. I'm not. They're watching. I know. Shout out to you guys out there, you Eastern European motherfucker. Shout out to you guys in Russia. I know you guys are out there. Keep working, guys. Keep working. Good luck. The bots poker site will exist in 5 years. Y'all will be able to run your bots in the site forever. So another thing, a couple people in the chat, and by a couple people I mean Al Heyman, Puppy. talking about collusion on the site. Obviously, collusion, I know, is one of the biggest things to worry about now in games. Maybe one or two people playing at the same table, potentially sharing cards information, potentially playing at the same table for multiple sessions in a row over a period of time, sit and goes. I know that's a big worry there. How do you guys handle potentially detecting collusion? Do you rely on the players to sort of maybe send in if they see something, and then you're on top of things in terms of handling it from there?
But collusion is much easier than bots, frankly. It's very. I mean, if you are colluding, you are generally playing in a way which wouldn't be optimal for a person to play on their own. So there are absolute giveaway signs, frankly, of collusion. And we talked about earlier, you know, it's very easy to spot bot use after 500,000 hands. It's easy to spot collusion after a few hundred hands, frankly. So we catch clues much quicker. And like I said, we've got real-time alerts now for suspicious behavior. So, you know, often we can detect within a few seconds that something dodgy has gone on, and we can review the pair of players in question and so on. So, you know, collusion, there's not much of a future if you are a colluder. You know, if you are that kind of person, you're not going to get away with it on the MPN. You really aren't. Not for any significant amount of time anyway. Yeah, I think I'm not going to say we've got collusion solved, but I'm much more confident about our ability to detect that going forward. We've got really solid tools for preventing collusion now. Actually, that was the very first thing I did with Microgaming when I joined the company. Was I was originally brought on as a consultant to work on a new game integrity project. So we were revamping the entire game integrity tools and the entire system. So that was my first job, was to write an enormous document with a whole bunch of recommendations about things we should change and things we should add to the system. And you know, it's an ongoing process, but collusion was the first thing we addressed, and yeah, we're in a really good spot now.
Yeah, I don't want to ask any specific questions. I know you can't answer them, and also it gives strategy away to people out there who might be thinking about doing something like that. So
that's a good idea.
Yeah, L. Heyman said, thanks, Puppy, for asking the question. There was a massive ring from Bissell II. I don't know what that is.
That's Tbilisi. Yeah. And that's true. We did. We had a big collusion ring from Tbilisi. We played multi-table tournaments. This was going back a couple of years now. I was with Microgaming at the time, but not for long. But we did, and actually that was at the time our collusion detection systems weren't as sophisticated as they are now, and it was quite difficult for us, quite time-consuming, and it took us a lot longer than it should have done to put people right in that situation. But I believe we did in the end. You know, it took a couple of months before we figured out all of the refunds and before we put a stop to it. But we did put a stop to it, and we did refund people in the end.
So in a spot like that, how do you guys handle communicating with people who may be affected? Because I know, you know, there's certain sites that you may get minimal communication. There's some sites that are a little bit slower on the communication. They don't tell you much. Are you guys pretty, I guess, transparent with people and saying, hey, we're working at this now, we'll get back to you very soon? Or, you know, what's the strategy for a situation like that?
Actually, for us, that's one of the hardest things, because we're not allowed to communicate directly with players. We're a software provider. We don't have players' names or email addresses. They're not in our systems. We don't have access to that. Operators don't want us to have access to that because their player database is the most valuable thing that they own. They can't do business without that player database. And you know, if you were to take that player database and hand it to another company, it would be worth potentially millions. So we don't have that information, and we can't just email players and say, okay, your refund is on the way or whatever. So we rely on the operator to act as an intermediary in that situation. So it's really down to the operator to handle that communication. We will communicate with them, and we'll say, okay, for example, here's a list of your players. They've been affected in this collusion case, and we're busy calculating refunds at the moment, but if you want to stay in touch with them, these are the players that are affected. But then it's down to the operator to do that. You know, we can't force them to contact the players, and we can't choose how they do it. So that is a difficulty for us. These days, what we try and do is obviously we provide the operators with as much information as we can about the case and the situation, and in the hope that they will communicate effectively with their players. But regardless of that, we handle the refunds and we make sure that they go out. So at the end of the day, if you forget about all the communication for a minute, the most important thing is that people are put right, the collusion is stopped, and people get their money back. And we can handle those two things. We can't handle the communication in the middle, but we can handle those two things, and we make sure that that's done.
I guess that's what sort of separates, I think, a lot of other poker sites, maybe from something like a Party Poker, 888 Poker, or PokerStars, is that you guys have the separate operators who, like a PKR or a Nordic Bet, you guys have these. So it's sort of like Microgaming, and then the operators are all sort of scattered out through here. I guess in that situation, you want to bring on an operator that you completely trust is going to represent the company in a correct way in terms of communication, in terms of, you know, being open with the, I mean, maybe not being open, being, I guess, just communicating with the players and putting on, because I guess they can't necessarily, maybe they can, maybe they could do things that might be, I guess, maybe they could do something that takes advantage of the players. I'm not exactly sure if they can put anything like that in there, but yeah, I guess you only want to bring on operators who you can feel like you can 100% trust will represent the company in a optimal way. Yeah,
absolutely. And you know, I mentioned earlier we've got 14 new operators in the pipeline. We're actually really picky with what operators we take on board. And my predecessor in particular, she put in place a lot of rules about the way operators had to behave on the network, and she turned down a lot of new sales leads, and so have I, frankly. We turned down people because they didn't pass our due diligence process, or because they were too rake back focused, for example. We didn't feel like they would be a good fit for the network, or you know, they didn't have proper poker management capabilities or whatever it might be. But there are various things that we look at. The integrity of the operator, whether they've got somebody who actually knows about poker, that kind of thing, before they can go live on the MPN.
They actually have to know about poker, huh?
Yeah, because what's the point otherwise? They're not going to be a commercial success unless they've got somebody who knows a little bit about poker. I mean, they don't have to be, you know, they don't have to know everything like you. They can.
I only know one side of things, the playing side of things. I don't know much about the other side of things.
Well, they don't have to be the best poker player in the world. If they've got a bit of experience operating online poker, that goes a long way. You know, they have to know something. You don't want someone coming in who has no poker experience at all, because they'll never be a commercial success. We won't make any money, they won't make any money.
I mean, Alex, I feel like we've seen what happens when you bring in people who don't know anything about poker for the most part and take over a company.
No comment.
I'm just saying, it seems like we've seen something like that happen. So, Roger Manfield in the chat. What's up, buddy? What's going on, Roger? I don't think I've actually seen you comment live in the YouTube before. So if you ask something, I'm going to say it because I only see on 2+2. He says, ask about the compensation. Players always get refunded some seemingly arbitrary amount of money. Can you give any arguments about not giving bots total winnings plus rake paid?
That's what we try to do. In fact, we basically try to recover as much money as possible from the bot, and then we'll chip in. You know, the operators will chip in, and we'll chip in to make that refund pool the size that it needs to be, so that everyone gets a fair refund. I can think of a couple of cases in the past where Microgaming's chipped in order to make that refund pool the size that it needed to be for everyone to get a fair refund. Like I said before, we don't refund players who win against the bots. We only refund players who lose against the bots. But we have also refunded Rake as well as the bots' winnings in at least 2 cases in the past that I can think of right now. So.
Yeah, it's got to be tough to you know, I mean, you mentioned you refund people that just lose money to the bots. I mean, in a way, everyone, even if you're winning money directly against the bots, you're still losing money to the bots if they're taking money out of the games, and they shouldn't be. So it's sort of like it's an interesting situation to be in, because, you know, in theory, you could argue that all players should get refunded even if they won money directly playing against the bots in that spot.
You can make that argument. Yeah, maybe they would have won more if they weren't playing against the bot. I don't know, but we're getting into very theoretical situations there. And also, if you start refunding winners as well, I mean, we may as well not be in business. At the end of the day, we won't make any money.
So why can you come on the podcast and talk to me about this stuff? Why? Because you don't. This is like, and I know you do the blog too. You write really good stuff on the blog on mpn.poker.com. you guys want to look at some of the stuff on there, there's a bunch of articles on there. So why can you be so open about this stuff, and why can you talk about it when it seems like a lot of other operators out there, they don't necessarily talk about it, they just don't want to, or it seems like that's not an approach that they would take?
Well, I mean, why not? At the end of the day, why not? You know, one of the reasons I wanted to do this, and one of the reasons I write the blog, is because we're not allowed to communicate directly with players. You know, like I've said before, we don't have players' names, we don't have email addresses, we don't have players' account information. So if, let's say I were to go on 2+2 and start a feedback thread on 2+2, I'm sure I get lots of good feedback. You know, there's a lot of smart people on 2+2. The problem is, they would expect me to be able to answer questions about their account. You know, why hasn't my deposit been credited to my account? When will my withdrawal be credited to my bank account? Yeah, how much money is in my account right now? Things like that. And I can't answer any of those questions. So, and there are also licensing concerns as well. So as a software provider, we have a different kind of license to an operator who actually acts as a B2C, business to customer operation. So we would need a different kind of license if we were going to communicate directly with players. So we're not allowed to, basically. But what we can do is we can have one-way communication. So you know, that's why I started the blog. I wanted to talk about the kind of things that are affecting the industry, and I wanted to talk about the changes that we're making and the things that we're thinking about, because I want people to understand that we actually care about poker. You know, we're not just a bunch of idiots that don't know what we're talking about. We do think through the decisions that we make, and when we make a change which affects you negatively, we've not just done that to spite you. We've not just done it because we're greedy and we're thinking short term and we want to make as much rake as possible, or whatever it might be. You know, we've thought it through. We've got the data to back it up. We're thinking about the right sort of things, and we're thinking about the future of the industry. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's difficult not having that communication with players. I've always had it in the past. You know, at Stars, I posted on the forums quite a bit when I was looking for for feedback on new software features. I'm not able to do that now, and I miss having that communication with players. But at least if I put out my thoughts into the atmosphere or whatever it is, I can get feedback, and we can be challenged on our thoughts and our assumptions, and we can do better. You know, that's the idea behind it.
So what's like the biggest challenge for you guys right now in terms of, I guess the goal would be to build the player base that's participating on the site. And so what's the biggest challenge in that? Because it seems like right now there would be an opening for a site or another site to step up and really promote maybe like the lower rake, for example. Like, I feel like I shouldn't have had to necessarily read that on the website. I should know about that. Like, that should be almost common knowledge amongst people who can play on the site, but I don't feel like it is. And that, I guess that seems like the biggest challenge, just getting that out there. But then how do you get that out there?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to get that message out there. And again, that's one of the reasons why I'm doing stuff like this. You know, I want to get that message out there. I want people to consider us. I know a lot of people are really dissatisfied with the market leader right now. I want those people to think about us, and I want those people to recommend us to their friends.
I'm going to start, hold on, let me write this one down. The market leader. I like this. All right, we got a new name. The market leader. Thank you, Alex, for that new name. Appreciate that. Thank you.
How about we say the current market leader?
The current market leader, correct. Okay, the current market leader, correct. People are a little bit upset with the current market leader. I would agree with you on that one.
So yeah, I want those people to think about us, and I want them to read the blog and read the way that we're thinking about the game, and maybe think, okay, yeah, I can buy into that.
Well, how do you get them to the blog? How do they find out about you? Like, if someone doesn't go on 2+2, if they don't go on Twitter, they don't go on Twitch, they don't go on YouTube, that seems like a challenge to find them. How can they find you? How can you guys meet each other? And then if you meet each other, how can they even know what the hell that means in terms of lower rake? Like, how can they know exactly how that would affect them over the long period of time?
Well, so we can only control what we do as Microgaming, and obviously we've got a network website. We do a certain amount of marketing. We have recently rebranded the network, and we're going to launch that brand in a fairly big way this year. So we're doing our part of it, and then the operators have to do their part as well. And they've got different ways of doing it. Some of them advertise on TV. Depends where you are in the world. Obviously, in the US, you're not going to see any of our brands advertising on TV, but in the UK, you'll see our brands advertising on TV all the time. Many of them advertise with affiliates. Many of them, some of them are starting to stream on Twitch, which I think is really exciting, and we're gonna incentivize that heavily this year. But I don't know that operators are going to want to go on TV and say we've got the lowest rake. You know, they're going to want to go on TV and say it's a fun experience, it's thrilling, it's exciting. They're not going to want to say you'll pay 60 cents less rate than PokerStars. But the current market leader.
The current market leader, correct? Yeah, I mean, I guess the argument always is that the recreational types of players, they don't necessarily care about the rake. But I would argue they don't care because they don't know about it. They don't exactly, they just don't know much about it. So it's, I guess this is parts of the challenge, right? That's part of PokerFuse in the chat. What's up, PokerFuse? Is that my boy Mike Gentile? What's up, buddy? If it's him, he says right now MPN is ranked 8th in global cash game traffic according to data on Poker Industry Pro. Shout out to PokerFuse giving themselves a plug. You are very close to passing Party Poker. Bang bang. What rank do you hope to achieve by the end of 2016?
I think we can be second actually by the end of this year.
Whoa!
I think we can be second. We only have to basically double in size to be second. I think we'll be top 5 by October, by September, October.
So you think that you can get to second?
The right partners lined up, and we can definitely grow.
You think it's ever possible to overtake the current market leader in terms of it seems impossible, but from a cash game traffic perspective?
It's not impossible. I think that's a longer term goal. It's definitely something that I would love to achieve that in the long run. Realistically, it's not going to happen this year unless something terrible happens to them or something amazing happens to us. It's not going to happen this year, but I've been around in this industry for a long time. When I first started playing, Paradise Poker was the market leader. Then Party was the market leader. Then 2006, 2007, Stars became the market leader. And just towards Black Friday, we, at Full Tilt, we really believed we were going to overtake PokerStars within, a few months. We had a really cool product about to come out at the time. We really felt like we could overtake the PokerStars at the time. So look, it's achievable. I think if we keep doing the right things, we have a bit of luck on our side, we can get there eventually. It's not going to be easy, but I'm definitely up for the challenge. I mean, there are people in this industry who just assume that we can never pass that point, or assume that they can never pass that point. And why bother if you're not going to even try? Also, I've worked with these guys. They're not smarter than us. They don't work harder than us. Why would we be afraid to challenge them?
Well, my theory has always been that the current market leader has a piece of every poker company that exists and rains down on them and limits the amount of growth that they can do on their own sites. But that's like my tinfoil hat 9/11 conspiracy theory. But whether that's true or not, who knows, man? I don't know.
I think it's true for a lot of the media, and particularly affiliates. In the past, a lot of media has been affiliate driven, and if you're an affiliate, at the end of the day, one of the last things you want to do is piss off your biggest advertiser. So obviously, there would have been very little criticism in the past of pretty much any big online poker site. It's not limited to the current market leader at all. That definitely would have been a trend in the past. It's less so now because we're starting to see more independent media, stuff like PokerFuse, Hello PokerFuse, stuff like Flush Draw. Some of these guys are producing some really interesting content, and it's much more independent than it used to be.
I think I missed the boat on setting up an affiliate link for this podcast and putting it in the description because I could have made myself some money, bang, bang. But yeah, I know everyone's very obsessed with the affiliate. I don't know. I haven't got on the affiliate parade yet about doing, I don't know. I'm not about the affiliate hustle. And even though it seems like some people are doing quite well on the affiliate hustle. So
yeah, fewer and fewer, unfortunately. I mean, it's become a very difficult time to be an affiliate, I think. A lot of affiliates are branching out into other things. Fantasy sports and I don't know, casinos, casino affiliates, investing, all sorts of stuff. You know, not an easy time to be an affiliate right now. They've been squeezed as well. It's not just the supernovas that have been squeezed.
Can we talk about that at all? Do you want to talk about that? Can we? I don't know if we can. Can we talk about like about the current market leader taking away Supernova lead out of nowhere? And I mean, obviously, you guys have views on that from just like a poker playing standpoint.
Yeah, it's probably best for me not to talk about that too much. Though I don't want to criticize a competitor. I'd rather leave that to you and your other guests.
Interesting. PokerFuse says, if not the affiliate model, how do you see the future of online poker marketing?
Oh, that's an interesting one. Do you know what? I haven't really thought about it from a third-party perspective. What I have seen though is that the most successful affiliates or third-party marketers over the last few years have been the ones that produce interesting content. So actually, people like yourself, Joe, would be in a good position right now to make money out of. Oh gosh, I assume you are. But the people who are really making money from being a third party, sending traffic to poker sites now, are people who stream on Twitch, for example. They're producing really interesting content for people to watch. Or it's people who create really good strategy content. Or it's people who create really interesting news articles about poker, you know, whatever it might be. Nobody is just going to, or very few people are just going to any old poker site and clicking an affiliate link now. People are a lot more choosy about the content that they consume and the links that they click. You know, so I think the future of affiliate marketing and that side of things is about creating good content, actually. People are actually genuinely interested in reading.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the operators or the affiliates. The challenge that they have now is to sort of create something, create a written piece, create a video type piece, do something with Twitch, and that's actually that's interesting. Something to think about, because I feel like Stars does a great job of streaming on Twitch and getting people to know about the site on but I don't think other sites are really done. Like you never see Microgaming anywhere on Twitch at all. No one's playing it. No one's talking about it. It's not very discussed.
That's not quite true. That's not quite true. So we ran a promotion in September last year. We started our annual tournament series, and it's called the Universal Championship of Poker. And as part of that Universal Championship, we had a
original name, Poppy. The Universal Championship of Online Poker. Original name.
No, Universal Championship of Poker, not just online poker. We might do some live poker in the future as well. You know,
okay.
We'll keep it open. Also, why limit yourself to online poker? You know. And we were thinking about calling it the World Championship of Poker, but no, we went for Universal. We went for tongue in cheek. And as part of that, we had a promotion called the Greatest Poker Player in the Universe. So all you had to do to become the greatest poker player in the universe was meet certain criteria, and one of them was posting about your tournament on Twitter, and something else was streaming tournaments. You got points for streaming tournaments on Twitch or YouTube or wherever it might be. So we actively encourage players to go out there and stream their tournaments. And we're going to repeat that this year. There's going to be more incentives for streaming on Twitch. There's going to be more tournaments, more interesting tournaments. We're having a mixed game tournament this year. Hey, like my mixed games. It's going to be really exciting, actually. September this year.
What about the other 11 months of the year?
We also have something coming out in July, something called Fish Party. This is our version of Jackpot Sit and Goes.
Oh no! Oh no! Guys, thanks for coming on the podcast. We're gonna wrap this up. All right, go ahead. Tell us more about it.
Right. But we've done something a bit different with Fish Party, right? And we're going to encourage people to stream these on Twitch. But we've done something a little bit different. Instead of having a fixed jackpot as the top prize, we've got a progressive jackpot. So the top prize is constantly growing, constantly getting bigger. No limit in theory. It's going to hit just over €1 million on average, which would be pretty exciting. We're also taking, Microgaming is known for its slot games. We're the market leader in online slots. And we're taking everything that we know about slot games and we're building that in to Fish Party Sit and Goes. So the bit at the beginning of Jackpot Sit and Goes has always annoyed me. Whenever you play anywhere else, that section of the game lasts a few seconds, and it's the most boring few seconds you can possibly imagine, right? You can win $1 million, and all it is ding, 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 ding. That's it, right? We're taking what we know about slot games, how to make slot games exciting, and we've got a real online slot game there, which spins, and you read the pay table to find out what you win, and it highlights what you win. It's really dramatic and exciting.
Maybe some lightning and some firebolts and stuff like that, some money raining down from the ceiling?
That sort of thing, not exactly that. Phase 2, maybe phase 2.
Okay.
So we're doing that, and that's going to be great. And then we're also taking a brand from a popular slot game. So Fishpot is already an online slot game, and we're using that brand in our Jackpot Sit and Goes. It's going to be really, really cool. It's going to be, frankly, the best version of Jackpot Sit and Goes out there. So not everybody likes Jackpot Sit and Goes, and that's fine. We've still got fantastically low rake in our cash games.
Okay, let's talk about the Jackpot Sit and Go rake. Why can't we make that lower? It seems like now the big argument is that the rake is just unbeatable on the current market leaders offering of the similar format.
So we're making that 5%, which is significantly lower than elsewhere. It's going to be 5% at all stakes.
5% at all stakes. Hold on a second. I have to Google something.
So that is significantly lower than you're paying elsewhere, which is pretty good, I think.
I want to check a number real quick. All right, yeah, 8%. Yeah, so 5% appears to be definitely lower. Yeah, is it 8% here? I think so, yeah. That'll be interesting. I mean, obviously, most professional poker players very much dislike the format, but it seems to be very popular with the recreational players out there, and it seems to be there. I mean, I'm not sure if it's. Do you think it's the? Do you think it's the future of poker? Unfortunately, do you think that's what most recreational players are going to enjoy playing? That's what they want to play.
Well, I think fun is the future of online poker, and you can't argue that these are fun for a lot of people. And so we do have to keep coming up with fun, interesting ways to play poker. Otherwise, people just aren't going to stay interested. And some of those are going to be more recreational focused, and some of them are going to be more reg focused. Like some of the ideas we've got around Heads Up, for example, they're probably not so recreational focused. At the end of the day, Heads Up is a tough game. It's not really the ideal game for beginners. But if we can make Heads Up playable again, because at the moment it's not really that playable. It's not easy to get a game in Heads Up. If we can solve those problems and come up with with a great, exciting, thrilling way of playing Heads Up again for the regs, then I'd love to do that.
Do you know why that for the current market leaders offering right now in three-handed fast format poker, why they chose why is it where if you play $100 one you can only win $200? I mean, I don't understand. Like, I don't get how that works. So you play like a $10 one, 3 people, you win $20. Why isn't it just 30? I don't know, man. Why do you think what do you think they went with that for? Because all the money that they don't make goes to the higher jackpots over time, which makes some sense too, I suppose, right?
Yeah, that's what it is. So it's not. I mean, actually, people talk about Rake in these games, and that's not really right, because these games have a pay table just like a slot game does, and that pay table has what we call an RTP, which stands for Return to Player. So in the case of our Fish Party Sit and Goes, the RTP is 95%, which means that 95% of the money that goes in gets paid out, and 5% is the operator revenue for that game, right? But that 95% that's paid out, some of it goes out in small increments, and some of it goes out in gigantic increments. Like the progressive jackpot starts at 5,000 times the buy-in in our version, so it's a massive prize. In order to pay for that massive 5,000 times plus progressive jackpot prize, you've got to award less at the lower levels, the more frequent levels. So that's just how it works out. And it's not really right to think about it in terms of rake. It's kind of an effective rake, I guess, but it's closer to a slot game than anything else.
James Selapuliak says, ask him if he's ever thought about a different model for revenue, like a sitting fee instead of rake.
Yeah, we have actually. A few years ago, I had some discussions with a really smart guy called Sean Marcus, and we were talking about potentially doing time charges. And the more we thought about it, the more levels we got into it. We're trying to think about ways to make it unexploitable, and trying to reduce the incentive for people to leave immediately after the time charge, immediately before the time charge and things like that. And the more we got into that, the more we realized that it was actually just worse than Rake. It was just a worse model. It was more inconvenient for all parties. So I'm not saying that there isn't a better approach, but I don't think time charges in online poker is really the way to go. I've thought about it quite a bit in the past, and I just can't find a way to make it work. If somebody does have a way to make it work, then by all means, write a blog.
Don't say that. I know one guy on Twitter is going to get in touch with you now, and you don't want to get him on. He's going to tweet you 1,000 times a day. You say that. So shout out to my boy Juice Rexstar33333. I know you're out there. Hit up Alex on Twitter and give him all your ideas. I know he's excited to hear them, Poppy. He's got many ideas. I'm gonna get some shout outs here real quick. Hold on a second. Let me get some shout outs. I see a lot of people who are commenting this is their first time in the chat. So let me get some shout outs. Jackson Leonard says, "What's up, puppy? Nice shirt, Alex." Yeah, I said I liked your shirt too before we started. I said that's a real nice shirt. I told the other people would show you some love for that sick shirt you got there. Let's see, Jonah Vella, puppy. What's going on? Shazam, Kazam. My boy Mark Kennedy, Lost in Poker. What's up? Epic Pure Vids. Silver, puppy. What's going on? Nikola Djokovic. Are you the tennis player's brother? What's happening, buddy? Wim Rosebum, what's up, Wim? Roger. Once again, Roger, what's going on? Lee Jam. Mumming One, David Huber. Who else is in the chat, man? Let me see. You know how to give a shout out, Alex? Do you ever give shout outs to anyone?
Probably. It's been a while. I can't think of anyone who might be watching right now.
Give Anna a shout out. Anna, what's Anna's last name? McChesney? Give her a shout out. What's up, Anna? You can't give her a shout out, huh? You're nervous to give a shout out?
Oh, I thought you just done it.
No, you got it. I want to see how you give a shout out.
No, you carry on.
Do you know Spanish?
Poco.
Oh, okay. It helps if you know Spanish, but I feel like any language you could insert in there. And shout out to the male version of Kate Hall. What are you, Poppy? Sick hair? Come on, Jonah. I'm not the male version of Kate Hall. She's the female version of me. Matique says, Joey, please ask him why the set out time is so short. Now, I actually have to I have to put another question in there because I have another question that actually contradicts that. Yeah, somebody was talking about that, about camping, about sitting out in general, that people were, because that's a big thing I know on the current market leader, is that what happens at the higher stakes is that you'll have a regular play, a regular sit, one person's allowed to sit out, and then that person can just sit out until the game fills up. And it appears that on your site that if you sit out, that you get kicked off the table really quickly. So how do you approach that whole entire idea of table camping, of how long a player gets if they go to the bathroom or if they go, do whatever they do, or extracurricular activity or something like that?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. So basically, we've been experimenting with lots of stuff in this area around table camping, also around seating scripts as well. I know one of the questions in your 2+2 thread was about seating scripts and why we've not done enough.
Yep, easy donkey.
As it happens, we've tried lots of things over the last year and a half. We've tried changing the settings of the table so people will get kicked out sooner, or they can't return as quickly. We've tried changing those existing settings that we have. We've also tried introducing new functionality, and sometimes we found that for example, we did make one change about a year ago, which stopped seating scripts for about 7 or 8 days, and then they found a way around it. Again, it's kind of the arms race situation. We've tried a couple of other things since then as well. We've also tried taking legal action against people. So we are taking it seriously. We've just not been that successful so far, and it is a very, very difficult thing to deal with. Actually, I would say that's probably a harder challenge than bots at the moment for us. And it's probably a more visible situation for players on an everyday basis. But it's something that we're taking seriously. We're just trying to get it right. I've got a couple of people advising me on this at the moment, and we're chatting back and forth about how we can deal with the situation without ruining the experience for everybody else. One of the things that commonly gets suggested is around the sitting out situation is why don't you force people to sit in and play a couple of hands? That one comes up all the time, and the answer is that we just can't. We're regulated by about 7 different regulatory authorities which say we can't force people to play. There are there are things like that to think of. And then one of the other things I've come to realize over many years working in software development, particularly in poker, you make a change here and it will have an effect over here in somewhere that you never thought about in the first place. So we have to be really, really careful. I mean, we, especially as Microgaming software provider, we have to be really, really careful that we don't make a change over here, which seems like a trivial change, but actually costs our operators, you know, tens of thousands of euro in a couple of hours or whatever it might be. So we're experimenting, and we're doing lots of small experiments to try and see what the effect is on table camping and on seeking scripts, but we haven't found the solution yet. Really keen to hear ideas. So if anyone wants to tweet me about this situation, feel free.
Yeah, I think the ideas float around a lot on the forums on 2+2 is about maybe a global waitlist sort of thing, or you can give a warning to people who are habitual users, and the argument is that you can calculate who is using a script and who is these guys that are constantly getting these seats and on the tables, and maybe you should warn them, punish them, whatever sort of thing.
Well, that's actually one of the things that's on our backlog is to develop detection for people who are using seating scripts, and we would look at the number of times they try to sit down, who they sit down with, how quickly they sit down, all of that stuff. The problem is that's a very, very difficult thing to develop compared to just removing table selection altogether, which is really easy to do. And if we were to just remove table selection altogether, we would potentially get rid of all of these problems all in one fell swoop. So that's a very tempting solution, I have to say. The thing about that is, you know, like I said earlier, I'm a bit of an old timer when it comes to poker, a bit of an old school guy, and I like the ability to choose the table that you're sitting at. I like the ability to sit with your friend when you want to have a quick heads-up game with your friend, or you want to have a home game online or whatever it might be. I wouldn't want to lose that entirely. So that's the kind of thing that I have to weigh up in my head. You know, it would be very easy to just get rid of table selection and solve all these problems in one fell swoop. We might introduce other problems, and we're going to take away the ability for people to sit with their friends and play a friendly game and do other important things like that. So, do you know what? It's such a difficult thing, and I wish we didn't have these people in poker. I wish we didn't have people who only thought about the short term and whose goal was to just make as much money as possible for themselves without considering the long-term future of the game, or without considering the experience that they're giving to other people. You know, it's such a selfish mentality. It really makes me angry to have to deal with it on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, look, it's a difficult one to deal with. It really is. We don't have all the answers yet, but we are working on it.
What if it was something where at the smaller stakes, micro stakes, there was regular table selection as is, but as the stakes got higher and that type of behavior was more common, then you implemented a system of potentially changing the way that you can table select or the way that it works there, but keeping it the same at stakes that it's not necessarily an issue?
I mean, potentially. I think that would be quite a complicated interface. I'm not saying it's impossible, and I'm not saying we won't do it, but yeah, I would have to think that through in a lot more detail.
Let me there's a couple more 2+2 things I just want to get here. I want to show my boy Top Pair 2 Pair some love. He says, please ask Alex his thoughts on the current market leaders. No rake for less than $1 pots at micros back in the day, and his thoughts on how this impacted player movement up the stakes comparative to nowadays. Thank you.
Okay, well, I mean, there were lots of those little weird irregularities in the rake schedule back then. I remember, like, for example, I think it was 3-6 fixed limit hold'em or something had a massive rake break compared to the stake above, or there were loads of little spots where you were paying less rake than you would be at the stake below or the stake higher, or there were loads of little weird things like that in their rake structure at the time. I think that probably did have the effect. I mean, similar to our rake structure now, where we're charging a lot less at the lower stakes. I think it probably had the effect of extending player lifetimes, and that would have had the effect of you know, creating more upward movement in stakes, more upward mobility, and that's a good thing. As it happens, they probably did it by accident. Probably wasn't an intentional thing. But that it's a similar goal that we're trying to achieve with our rate structure now. We're trying to create that upward mobility, and we're trying to extend player lifetimes.
I like it. I like it. I feel like this is kind of advertising a bit of an ad for microgaming, isn't it? Kind of. I mean, I don't know, but also there has been some things in the past where microgaming used to be popular, and there's been some scandals or some things that have happened in the past that sort of took away some of that popularity. Correct? Because back in the day, it used to be a pretty big place to play, I believe.
Yeah, we started out life. It was over 13 years ago now. We had our 13-year anniversary in March, so we're a stroppy teenager now, and. We started out life as Prima Poker, so a lot of the old timers will remember Prima Poker. Remember the software with the massive board cards for Hold'em, and it was very fast software. I remember that as well. I used to play many years ago. Actually, Prima was one of the very first places that I played, and we were the market-leading network for a long time. And we weren't the market leader overall, but we were the biggest B2B supplier in poker. And I think it was 2006, we had the largest ever pot online between a couple of Swedish guys. We were big in Sweden back then. We also had the Monte Carlo Millions back in the day, which was a really, really cool live poker tournament. And I tell you what, if you watch the old footage from Monte Carlo Millions, it's absolutely engrossing. It's fantastic. The commentary is fantastic. The play is fantastic. You've got Phil Ivey makes the final table back-to-back years. I think he wins it the second year, and there's an incredible hand between him, incredible few hands actually, between him and a guy called Paul Jackson, Action Jackson he was called, a guy who now plays at Dusk Till Dawn in Nottingham. And that hand was just incredible. Their bluff, Phil Ivey bluffs and Paul Jackson bluffs them back, and then
it's the hand that always comes up on YouTube whenever you're looking at poker videos. It always comes up somewhere on the side.
That was our tournament, and then I think it's fair to say that the network kind of lost its way for a few years, and I don't think it really got its mojo back until my predecessor came along, and she basically spent her time as head of poker cleaning up the network. So she got rid of what we call parasitic operators, which are basically just operators that came on board. They offered like 75% rate back or 80% rate back or whatever it is, and then that was their only marketing strategy, their only way of acquiring players. And an operator like that is terrible for a network, because all they do is acquire big winning players who then drain money from other operators. And so you've got big operators, big sportsbook operators who are advertising on TV and paying a lot to acquire players. And then you've got these parasitic operators who are paying rake back and doing nothing else. And their players are just winning money from everyone else on the network, and it's terrible, absolutely terrible for the poker ecology. So she cleaned up all of those guys, and she put in place a lot of rules which have given me the foundation to grow on. And so for the last about year and a half, we've been growing. It's about a year and a half. And we're up significantly year on year. Now I think it's over 40% actually. The last scouting report that I read, we were over 40% year on year in terms of player numbers. Now, obviously, PokerScout's not the perfect way to measure our traffic. In fact, it's quite inaccurate, frankly, especially with sit and goes and MTTs now making up such a massive portion of revenues for a lot of people. But it's pretty exciting. When I took over as head of poker, we were 17th on PokerScout, and now we're 8th, and we're within touching distance of 7th.
Whoa, you mean PokerFuse Pro? That's what you mean. I think you meant to say PokerFuse Pro.
They get their data from PokerScout, so it's basically the same thing.
No, it seemed like you mentioned the Monte Carlo Millions, and it seems like one of the things that the current market leader does extremely well is builds the site, builds the brand by these live events. So you have the EPT, which is wildly successful pretty much everywhere, it seems like. And I imagine something like that is hard to put together. But is there any plans or do you maybe have something like that now or in the future to start doing things like that?
So we've got the MPN Poker Tour, which is it's a small stake series. So each main event is €500 or 500 plus €50. It's round about €500 anyway. The packages are €1,500. This year, we've been to some really interesting places as well, places which are kind of off the beaten track. So in January, we went to Vienna. We just went to Sofia, Bulgaria a few weeks ago. That was the last week in April. And this August the 11th, actually, we're going to Tallinn in Estonia. That's the first time we're going back to a venue that we've previously been to, is Tallinn, Estonia. It's an absolutely beautiful city. Excited to be going back there. They were really good to us last time, and that was the last time we went there. It was the biggest event we'd run to date. It was the first time we'd guaranteed any money. You know, we've really built this tour up from scratch, and now we're going back with a 150k guaranteed in a 500 euro tournament. And we try and be a little bit different. So I've played I've played a lot of live events actually over the course of my poker career. And I sometimes found, especially recently, and especially the World Series for some reason, people take it extraordinarily seriously, and they sit there with their headphones and their sunglasses on, and they don't talk to anybody. You know, that's not the environment that we try and create. We're a low-stakes series. Why would you take it that seriously at the end of the day? You know, we want people to have a drink and have a laugh, and enjoy themselves and make friends. We want it to be friendly and exciting, and that's what we're trying to do. And actually, the feedback that we get, you know, people come to one of our events and they come repeatedly. They come to the next event and the next event and the next event. You know, we've got people who have been to every single event. It's fantastic. And the feedback that we get from them is that our events are more fun than other people's, even though some of the events are more prestigious. Some of the other events are, you know, bigger prize pools, more serious competition, whatever it might be. Our events are fun, and I want to keep that atmosphere going forward. I think that's really important.
There's actually a tour here that I got in contact with a couple of years ago. I did some commentary for them. It's called the Bar Poker Open. And that's the premise of that too, is they put the events on, their smaller buy-ins, but it's meant to have fun. And the feedback they get is great. They've expanded over the past couple of years. They're having 2 events this year, one in Vegas during the summer and one in Borgata in December. And they basically have the same exact approach. And it seems like that approach does extremely well amongst the recreational crowd and just people who, as you mentioned, aren't like the headphone guy. I mean, I understand you want you fucking take it seriously. It's your job, whatever. Okay, I got that. But at the same time, I think that's also a good approach to take with things too. And so is the plan in that to expand to more events, or is the plan, I guess, in that to draw awareness to microgaming and then convert those players that might potentially play there to play on the site? Or I guess, how do you guys think about from that perspective?
So both. We at the moment this year we're planning to go to 4 destinations. We've been to Sofia, Vienna. We're going to Tallinn in August, and we're going to go to Casablanca later this year. Casablanca.
Nice.
Which is pretty exciting. Heard it here first. So that's two exclusives you've had, by the way. Now, Joe, you've had Fish Party. That's the first time we've announced Fish Party publicly, with all the details anyway. And that's the first time we've announced Casablanca. So. Very exciting.
If you said I'll give you $1,000 if you guess where Casablanca is, I wasn't gonna be able to do it. But now I know where it's at, and I would literally never have guessed this in my entire life.
You just Googled it?
Yeah, I Googled it. I want to know where it was. Morocco? It's across from Spain?
Beautiful place, absolutely beautiful place, and loads of really fun things to do at the hotel as well. The person who looks after our live events, Clovis, she went over and she raced quad bikes on the beach, which is, I mean, that's just cool.
I'm in.
It's so cool. So, yeah, so we're doing that. We're going to aim to have 4 events again next year, grow the guarantees, make them really exciting. I would rather have 4 festivals with lots of money guaranteed and lots of interesting events at those festivals, than to have, say, 8 festivals which weren't as big and exciting. You know, I'd rather concentrate it into 4 great festivals each year. That's what we're gonna try and do going forward anyway.
And I guess at that point in time, once the 4 become something that you've got down really well, then you can start thinking about expanding. Or if they're successful and you see the ROI on the events is something that you think justifies potentially growing from there as well.
Yeah, I mean, we are trying to grow from each event to the next. We're trying to do things better, and obviously prize pools change from one location to another. Different locations in the world can sustain different levels of guarantee, for example. So we haven't always gone up in guarantee, but we've always made each event better than the last in some way. You know, whether it's adding live streaming for the first time, whatever it might be. So there's always things that we can do better. And until we get to the point where we are doing each event as well as it can be done, I don't really want to just double the number of events or triple the number of events in a year. I'd rather have quality than quantity at this point.
Why don't I know about these? Why don't I know these exist? Why don't most players know these types of things exist?
That's a good question. We want people to know. We're trying to get the word out there. Again, some of it's down to us and some of it's down to our operators. Obviously, we're not going to Chicago.
No, but
so
it's just like in terms of in the online poker world, like why don't the online poker world, like I feel like I should know a lot of things that are happening in online poker world that involve poker sites or like events, like things like that. I feel like I personally should know about just because I have to consume information and knowledge about what's happening because I want to be able to talk about different things to different people on the podcast. But something like this, you know, like I said with the Rake earlier, like why don't more people, like, I guess that's the challenge, right? And you can only do so much, the operators can only do so much, but it seems like from Microgaming's perspective, maybe highlighting these events or highlighting just the general Rake, I mean, that seems like something that could be done from your guys' perspective, from you personally, your perspective.
Oh yeah, we're trying, and there's probably more we can do. Well, there's certainly more that we can do.
Right.
But we're trying. I mean, this is why we're doing things like, you know, this is why we open Twitter accounts. This is why we started blogs. We want to get ourselves out there. We want people to be aware of us. We want people to consider us as an alternative to the market leader, the current market leader. Yeah, we'll keep doing more. Can't do everything.
You know what? I think it all goes back to something you said earlier. It centers around content creation. It sounds like there could be some potential for creating content around these live events. Maybe.
Absolutely. Yeah.
See, I mean, now we're brainstorming here. I don't know the right way to phrase this one. The other competing market operators are taking notes right now. They're watching and taking notes. So hire Joey. Yeah, hire me. Good point. Let me see something here. Yeah, this was a common question. This is a question I asked you, and you can't answer this question. And this was something that I had a hard time finding this out, honestly. What is the best MPN site to play on? And then a couple people asked that question. Now, for me, when I was looking up potential skins or sites to play on, I had a very tough time exactly figuring out which one I should play on. Why? Like I feel like I'm good at deciphering information when I'm reading it, and I struggled with doing that personally. So I know there's other people out there who just have no idea what to look for or how to even, you know, decide, all right, I'm going to choose this one over this one over this one. Do you have any recommendations for those people out there to deciding on a skin? Because I know you have to be impartial and you can't exactly name one.
Yeah, so I have to be impartial, but you can go to our website, which is mpn.poker. And you can see right there at the top of that page, there's a link, poker rooms. Click through to poker rooms and you'll see every single poker room that's active on the MPN at the moment. And really, it's a personal choice. So you can look at the different websites that are available. You can see what kind of welcome offers are available at each one. You can pick, depending on what's important to you, you might pick somebody who has a great free spins offer, for example, or you might pick somebody who has a great deposit bonus, or somebody who gives you 30% rake back to begin with. Or maybe you go for a publicly traded operator because that's important to you. We've got several publicly traded operators. Maybe you look at the different ways that the operators protect player funds. You know, that's available on their websites. You can find that out. It's up to you to decide what's most important to you. A lot of it's going to be obvious. You know, if you're from a particular region in the world, there is going to be an operator which is more suitable for you. If you're from the Far East, there are operators for the Far East. If you're from Finland, there are operators which target Finland, and it's going to be obvious which ones they are. But yeah, it's really down to you. It's a personal choice. And to be honest, I would have a difficult time choosing. Even if I was allowed to play on the MPN, I would have a difficult time choosing.
Brad in the chat says, "This is going to be a 3-hour Microgaming commercial." I mean, I'm talking to the guy who works for Microgaming. I got to talk about I'm talking about Microgaming. We spent the first hour and 30 minutes talking about these other type of topics that were very relevant to online poker in general. Now we're talking about this. He came on the podcast for an hour and 35 minutes. I'm gonna let him talk about how to choose a skin. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. You know, I can't. I'm sorry, Brad. If someone's watching this long and they got some sort of, they don't like that approach, I mean, that's okay, man. You know, I'll tell my boss. My boss will fire me. Hey, boss, can I do that? Can I do it? But you sure? It's not okay. Boss says I can do it, Brad. So I'm gonna be able to do it. So
we've talked about loads of stuff. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. I agree.
The one thing we didn't talk about that you had emailed me about was valuing players. You know, we talked about, you mentioned the blog at the beginning. We haven't really talked about it, and I think this is one of the most interesting things I've written about on the blog.
Let me pull it up because I want to. This is on the MPN.poker. What the hell is it .com? MPN.poker/blog/value poker players. This is one of my favorite articles I've ever read about related to poker, by the way, too. And I was going to ask you about it, but honestly, like me, I was rereading it again now, and I'm like, I'm not even sure what to like pinpoint. I was just going to go from the top and start from there, but then I get sidetracked in these other things over here too. But let's talk about the article, because this is certainly one of the most insightful things I feel like that I've read in terms of how an operator thinks about things. So go ahead.
Well, thank you. So I started off by saying that a lot of players think that the more rake that they pay, the more they're worth. So you see it quite often on 2+2. And in fact, I was reading something written by Justin Bonomo recently where he said, I paid $180,000 in rake. And he thinks that makes him valuable to a poker site, and it doesn't. You know, it depends. It depends on a lot of different things. You might have paid $180,000 in rake and actually have cost the poker site money. And when we talk about the poker ecology, you know, there are people who don't believe the poker ecology exists. Another thread on 2+2, which I read quite recently, they said the current unsustainable poker environment is a myth. It's not a myth. Poker ecology is a real thing. Everything that you do when you sit down at a poker table has some sort of impact on the players around you. You know, if I sit down at a poker table with you, right, and every time you do something which I don't agree with, I insult you and I call you an idiot and I make you feel really uncomfortable at the table, you know, at the end of the day, you're just going to go, well, this guy's a dickhead, and you're going to leave. You're not going to play anymore. I've reduced your value by doing that to you, right? And there's so many other ways that you can reduce the value of players around you. One way, which is, in my opinion, being focused on too heavily, is you can be a winner. If you're a winner and you're taking money from your opponents, then you're reducing their spending power and you're reducing their lifetime value. Now, there's been a lot of focus on that from other poker operators recently. And obviously, if you're a winner, you're reducing the value of people around you. If you're a loser, you're increasing people's spending power, and so you're increasing their lifetime value. So we reward losers. There's also lots of ways that you can raise the value of people around you. If you're an engaging person to play against, if you're chatting, let's say you're somebody like Daniel Negreanu, right? And so Daniel Negreanu, he's fantastically good fun to play against. I played against him. Actually played against him in Raz at the World Series many years ago. Sat next to him and we chatted most of the time, and I don't think we got involved in too many pots, but he's very talkative, very engaging, very fun person to play against. He raises the value of the people around him at the table. He keeps them at the table for longer. People will deposit just to play against him. You know, he's the perfect player, but he probably wins. So it's not sufficient to just look at a player and go, okay, he's a winner, so he's bad for the site. Or, okay, he's a loser, he's good for the site. You've got to look at all of these other factors as well. You know, is the person engaging? Are they interesting? Are they fun to play against? And to date, we don't really have a way of measuring that. If you think about the way that we've valued players in the past, you know, we started out by looking at, okay, how many hours did a player play? Or how many hands has a player played? And some live poker rooms still do this. You know, they still rate you on the number of hours that you've played. And maybe you get like a point per hour or something like that, or a dollar on your loyalty card per hour played or something like that. It's quite common in Vegas still, I think. Then we went to Delt Rake, right? Everyone remembers Delt Rake. You just had to sit there and get dealt into hands and you were getting rake back. Terrible for the games, great if you were a tight player. And then we went to weight contributed rake. Right. Then we went to weight contributed rake, so you actually had to contribute to pots to get something back. An improvement on Delt Rake, I think. And then sort of the 2011, 2012 kind of time, maybe a bit sooner actually, the networks led this charge, and we started valuing people, valuing players based on whether they were a winner or a loser, in addition to the weighted contributed factor. So what we do on Microgaming at the moment, for example, is if an operator has a lot of losing players, we reward them for that, because we know losing players raise the value of people around them. They increase their spending power. So losing players are worth more than they might look like from the weighted contributed rake alone. So we reward operators who bring in lots of losing players, and we take money from operators who have lots of winning players to pay for that. So we redistribute it among operators. Players never see it. But I think the next level is to get a little bit more detailed. So right now we're looking at winners and losers, and we're basically saying winners are bad and losers are good. And that's not good enough. It's far, far too simple. And we need to look at all of these other factors as well. We need to look at the complete picture of how a player affects the value of people around them, as well as the value that they're actually generating themselves. So you look at player A's rake, but you also look at his effect on player B's rake, and player C's rake, and player D's rake. And if he's the kind of person that raises the value of players around them, then he's actually worth more to you than his rake would suggest. And if he's the kind of person that's reducing the value of players around them, he's worth a lot less than you might think. So Justin Bonomo, for example, he's paid $180,000 in rake. He mentioned in his recent tirade. We don't know if he's actually worth $180,000 to the site. He might be worth $400,000 if he's the kind of person who's exciting to play against. He chats at the tables. He plays quickly. He's engaging and interesting. People will deposit just to play against him. Then he's worth much more than $180,000. But if he's boring to play against, if he insults people in the chat, if he plays really slowly because he's playing 18 tables at a time, he's worth a lot less than $180,000. He might actually be worth less than nothing. He might cost the site money.
It's going to be. I almost actually had Justin Bonomo on tonight because I'm going to LA in a couple days. I wanted to have him on, so that would have been quite interesting to ask him about this later on tonight. But he'll be on sometime soon, guys. Probably maybe this week, maybe next week, something like that, and we'll be able to actually talk about that too. Okay, so you're saying that a site can actually lose money on players who are raking $180,000 to the site. I just don't see how it's possible, but I can understand there may not be a concrete way to show you that. It may just be other factors that are not necessarily concrete, but I think people have a hard time believing that that could be possible.
Of course it's possible. Of course it's possible. If I drive away all my opponents and they don't want to play anymore, whereas if they'd played against someone else, they would have played much longer. The difference between those two values is what that person has cost you. So yeah, I can generate $180,000 of rake, but I can be so terrible to my opponents. I can be so nasty to them, and I can be so.
Okay, hypothetically, let's say
that I reduce their value so much.
Let's say all you do is just play. So you log on, you play a combination of high stakes cash games, and you play some heads up sit and goes. Like I think Justin probably did that. He played tournaments, he played heads up sit and goes, and he played high stakes no limit cash games. So in that perspective, what could he have done that would be, just besides playing slow and being a winner? Like what could he have done to decrease or increase his value from a site perspective then?
Well, some ways that he could increase his value. If he's a fun, exciting player to play against, I'm going to play longer against him. I'm going to stay at the table longer. If I lose my chips, I'm going to rebuy. If I lose all my money, I might redeposit. So people like to play against fun opponents. They like to play against loose opponents who get involved in pots. They don't like to play against tight opponents. They don't really, and this is a little bit more controversial, but I think a lot of people don't like to play against opponents who re-raise them excessively before the flop. And I know excessively is a bit of a fun word there.
That's what poker is, though. You want to take advantage of the opponents, and re-raising a weaker player before the flop is the way to take advantage of them a lot of times.
Of course you do, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing on its own. All of these things, they contribute together, so they are. It's the aggregate of these things, if you like, that makes a difference. So if you have a lot of these characteristics, a lot of these positive characteristics that cause people to play longer, that cause people to redeposit, that cause people to to enjoy playing with you and you know, develop a good relationship with the game of poker. Then your value can be far more than it appears from your weighted contributed rake alone. Even weighted contributed rake is flawed in itself. You know, there's no perfect model of valuing a player. You could argue that weighted contributed rake. You could argue that rake should be winner take all. I would argue that actually. I think winner take all is better. I'm
in for that, but I like to play hands, so. But yeah, well, yeah. I guess I already get it.
So that's my argument. Now, I do think that it would be a pretty extreme case whereby someone had paid $180,000 of weighted contributed rake and was worth less than zero. I think that would be a very extreme case. But I can certainly foresee a case where somebody's paid $180,000 in rake and they've got $80,000 in rake back and they've received $50,000 in promotions. And so now they're costing the side money. You know? After all of the rake back, after all of the promotions, after all of the loyalty rewards, they've also reduced the value of the players around them, and therefore they've actually cost you money. That could easily happen.
But it seems like with the approach they're taking now, both of those guys are getting punished. The guy who's costing the players and the guy who may be action, maybe fun. The guy who's action fun, who's playing a lot of hands and making the experience fun for the recreational player, he still has to pay the higher rake. He's still getting punished the same way that this other player is, who is you know, lower value. So the higher value guy and lower value guy are still, they're both getting punished equally in terms of the effect that's happening with them now. And I don't know if there's a way to change that, but it seems like maybe that's something you're thinking about longer term.
It's definitely something we're thinking about. And you know, I mentioned in the blog, we've got a data scientist. In fact, we've got a couple of data scientists. How cool is that, by the way? We have data scientists.
Shout out to them. Can we get them on the pod? Well, I want to know more about data.
Well, this guy anyway, he's looking at this now, and you know, we store a lot of data on each poker hand that takes place, and I think it will be possible to look at a player and look at the impact that they have against the players that they play with. I mean, if, for example, just to really simplify this, if I tend to play against players who have a very low lifetime value, and player B happens to play against players who have a very high lifetime value, then you could argue that player B is raising the value of players around them, and me, I'm lowering the value. That's a really simple way of looking at it, and I'm sure there's a cleverer way, there's a more detailed way to figure this out, and that's why someone much smarter than me is working on it. But I would love to move to a system which took all that into account.
So how did the current market leader become the current market leader all those years? By taking the exact opposite approach of that. So basically, it seems like the opposite approach of that worked for so long, but now there's no way to tweak that. I mean, this seems like the extreme opposite end of things in a way. Is like you kind of go from the current strategy that was before that most sites used, and now you're sort of going the exact opposite without really like sort of maybe picking a way in between. And to most people, it just looks like it's sort of for money. It's to take money. It's to limit the winners and maximize the losers, and for the site to end up with most of the money.
I think some people are thinking of it that way, and I think we need to move on to the next level of thinking. Frankly, I mean, in the blog I talk about level 4 thinking, which is the dual layer systems like True Value and source-based rake and that kind of thing. You know, those systems basically say winners bad, losers good. And they try and incentivize people to lose. I think we can do better than that, and I think we can move to the next level. We're too simplistic right now.
I guess that's one of the challenges of many challenges in microgaming, and you potentially taking microgaming to be second market leader, current market. I mean, yeah, that's one of the challenges to figure out. If a site can do that the best, that might be where players start to go to.
Yeah, and if we can crack this, and if we can be the first to crack it, then I think we'll do well. I mean, another one of the things that I've always thought about, which I think is interesting, is when you play live poker, you've got a reputation associated with you. When you sit down, if you're a really unpleasant person, if you stink, you're nasty to everybody at the table, that kind of thing, and you sit down, then people will stand up, or they won't sit down in the first place. They won't play with you. You have a reputation you carry around with you. Whereas online, because because the player pool is so much larger, you're often completely anonymous. and you don't really carry that reputation around with you. You can go from abusing one player to abusing another player to abusing another player to abusing another player, and there's so many players that it doesn't matter. You know, you'll constantly be up against different people. You don't carry that reputation with you. So I've been thinking about things like I don't know, Reddit-style reputation systems for poker, for example. I think that's really, really interesting. So that, I mean, imagine if you could see in the lobby the reputations of players before you sat down with them. Would you ever sit down with someone who had a crappy reputation?
How bad are they? How much they lose? What kind of player? Tell me more about the player style. See,
okay.
Kind of goes back to that. But I understand what you're saying.
You get where I'm coming from there, right?
From a recreational player perspective, though, I think it's a pretty good idea.
You'd sit with the people who are the most fun and the most interesting to play with, wouldn't you? You'd sit with the Daniel Negreanis. And I
wonder how players would like this system. I mean, that's an interesting idea, because then you're sort of incentivizing players that you want to increase this value, because this is going to matter in terms of players deciding to play with you. I mean, that's a really interesting idea. It's something I've never heard of before.
But we want to incentivize people to make the game fun for their opponents, right? That's got to be the goal, because we know when players are having fun, they stick around for longer, they're worth more to the network. That's what we want to incentivize. So, I mean, we're thinking lots of ways to potentially do that. That reputation system one is one that I've floated a few times, and people always go, "Whoa, hang on a minute." You know, I think people wouldn't like that much, but I think there's some legs in it if we get it right. Anyway.
Interesting. I think we had yeah. If you guys want to check that blog post out, it will be on mpn.poker. Oh, you have a .poker domain. That makes sense. mpn.poker /blog/value-poker-players. Walter says, Walter M, thank you for rephrasing a question from earlier. Please ask him if the 10 best heads-up players in the world deposited large sums on his site and never played lower than 200, 400. Would that hurt the site, in his opinion?
The 10 best players playing 200, 400, would it hurt us?
And they never played lower than 200, 400. Would that hurt the site?
I doubt it. I don't know. I'd quite like that to happen, actually. Do you know the 10 best players? Would they like to come play on the MPN?
Yeah, that seems like that's like the old Full Tilt way. R.I.P. Full Tilt, rest in peace, buddy. That's the old Full Tilt way, where they had all this high stakes action at Rail Heaven, at the Dur Challenge. I mean, maybe that'll finish one day, but they had all this action. Then people would come on. I mean, that's how I first really got into poker. I started watching the high stakes. I'm like, holy fuck, I want to be like a red. I want to be a red name, So I feel like that thing is sort of going away with how poker sites are looking at things. They want to take away the high stakes, eliminate the high stakes, eliminate that stuff. And what's your outlook on that? Do you think there's a way to potentially maybe bring back higher stakes games to the site and then use that as a promotional tool to get more players to know about the site?
Potentially. I mean, one of the problems with high stakes, well, there's several problems with high stakes, but there's a huge risk there. So, for example, chip dumping, when chip dumping happens at high stakes, large amounts of money can move fraudulently very, very quickly. So you've got to be really on the ball with things like that. Also, the kind of fees which are involved in depositing and withdrawing large amounts of money, they're not trivial. And in order to overcome those fees, there's got to be significant gameplay that happens. Also, if one of your recreational players strays into one of these games by accident and loses a huge amount of money in a short space of time, that's a bad experience, especially if that's the player's first experience. That's not the kind of experience that we want them to have. So there are downsides to high stakes. There's obviously some massive upsides as well. You talked about Full Tilt. Actually, that they had it down with the whole Red Pro thing. They really engaged players with that. They really extended their lifetimes and increased their values. That's what the Red Pros did on Full Tilt. They increased the values of people around them. People would deposit just to play against them.
Right.
They would wait as 70 players went through the waiting list just so they could sit down for a few hands with Cloney Gowan.
Cloney Gowan, bang bang. Yeah, I'm in. I'm in. I like her.
So
what? Okay, so let me go back to that thing. So the high stakes things. What if you could figure out a way to to do something where you can sort of limit the stray recreational player from going in the games, but maybe incentivize higher stakes players that microgaming is a place that you might want to consider playing. And whether that's by potentially doing something with a rake, doing some sort of challenges, doing some sort of like coming up with some sort of idea that might bring certain players to the site, whether it's for a short period of time or a long period of time, it would depend. And then once again, you mentioned the fees and stuff like that goes into it. So you might not actually make back the amount of money that you spent on fees. So that wouldn't be worth it if you charged lower rake or if you charged less rake.
Well, look, if it was a promotional opportunity, if it was a way to get people interested and engaged, then yeah, I'm open to it. I'm certainly not against the idea.
Well, I feel like we always see people that want to, maybe they want to do some heads up challenges or something like that. Like for instance, WCG Ryder has been streaming on Twitch lately with his for his site, Upswing Poker, and he was playing Jungle Man the other day at 5,100 heads up. Now, let's say those two want to play. They're going to be paying so much rake. They're paying $3 per hand on the current market leader. Let's say they play, a couple thousand hands. They're paying a lot in rake. Let's say, for instance, they were going to play. Well, now if they had an option to play on Microgaming site, well, now they would be playing each other, but playing way less rake, and that sort of incentivizes them to actually play, because that's what a lot of regulars say. I mean, you say that there's not a lot of battling, and there isn't, but there are certainly times where regulars want to play against each other, and people like watching those games. People download clients to watch those games. People post hands on the forums about those games. So, I mean, I'm surprised we haven't seen something like that with a site that's trying to maybe establish itself to maybe reach out and to do something like that. But like, as you said, there are fees involved in this large money transaction. I'm not sure if that makes up for the difference in potential rake or potential new players that sign up. And that's sort of hard to quantify, I guess.
It's not just that. I mean, I would love it if those guys want to get in touch. If you want to play on the MPN or you want to play high stakes, I'm sure we can figure something out that will be good for both parties. But I mean, we've made a conscious decision to focus our marketing and focus our efforts on the wider end of the market. The lower stakes, the more recreational end of the market.
But that affects those guys, because there's thousands of people that watch them play each other on something like Twitch. Those guys, where do they play? They're going to play at the micro stakes. They're going down to those stakes.
Yeah, that's true, and like I said, I don't dislike the idea. And in fact, we have had some high stakes play recently. Victor Blom was playing on Microgaming for a while, and occasionally pops up again and actually plays PLO.
The great game of PLO.
Yeah, we're definitely open to it. In fact, I'd love to see it happen more.
Tyler Ben says someone hired Joey. Man, they could. PLO. Okay, so PLO, we know PLO and No Limit Hold'em. Different games, more flops, more money's being put into the pot, larger pots, more frequently. Are there any plans to maybe look at the rake system for each game and potentially lower the rake for PLO, or maybe even in the higher games, like something to incentivize players to maybe play more PLO in the future? Or has that even been thought about or discussed or whatever?
I've thought about it a little. At the moment, I think with the rate being so low, just generally, I'm not sure there's much of a need to reduce it further in PLO.
Yeah, I think at the micro low stakes, that's true.
Yeah, it may well be the case at the high stakes. It's basically baby steps. We made this change to the rake in September last year. We need to understand the long-term implications of it before we make further changes. It's also not trivial for us to change the rake as well. It does require development, requires a lot of testing, because you can't mess up rake. Basically, mess up rake, you have a huge impact on revenue. Definitely not ruling it out. I think there are some good arguments to be made that PLO should have lower rake, especially at the higher stakes, like you said. It's not something that we've got planned right now, I'll be honest. But it is something that we'll look at in the future.
I want to follow up on a thought about that too, because I think an argument might be, well, you're playing higher stakes. The rake doesn't necessarily matter as much. The big blind per 100 impact isn't as big. But I think from maybe a current market leader perspective, that they could view it that way. But from a an operator that's trying to move up the ranks and sort of build and build and build and draw people awareness to the site or get people to download the clients, maybe it's optimal to look at it from a different perspective in that if the current market leaders out there are charging, you know, $3 per hand or higher, well, if we start offering these games for $2 less a hand, well, now that could have this type of snowball effect where now more players are playing. I mean, just stuff like that. And I think that would be, because I know that might be an argument, but I feel like that's a counter to that argument too.
Yeah, although that, to be said, right, if we're going to, let's say, spend, like, let's call it a spend, if we're going to spend €100,000 reducing the rake of PLO, I think I would actually, in a given period of time, I think I would actually prefer to spend that on a promotion that encourage people to play PLO.
That's one of the arguments as well too, that people to spend money on the promos type stuff.
Yeah, we have done that. We had Halloween last year. We had a promotion called 4-Card Fright Fest, which encouraged people to play PLO. It was an achievements-based promotion. It was pretty cool. Yeah, we've done it before.
Any other plans for any other PLO specific ideas coming up here in the future?
There's nothing coming up in the next couple of months, but I think it's very likely we'll rerun that promotion this year. It was quite successful for us. You know, when people move from Hold'em to PLO, some people actually do better. They have more chance to win because I think PLO isn't quite as assuming you've got past that very beginner stage. I think PLO isn't quite a game of huge edges like Hold'em is. You know, you have a chance, especially in the short term. You have a chance to succeed as long as you're not completely clueless. You know, you do have that point where you're completely clueless. We've looked, for example, we looked at sit and goes a while back, and we found that you might think the worst game for a new player to play, the worst sit and go for a new player to play would be something like Omaha High-Low, you know, really complicated game. But it's not. It's Double Up Hold'em. Double Up Hold'em is the worst possible game for a new player to play. And then Heads Up Hold'em is not far after that, actually. Omaha High-Low is one of the better games, believe it or not, because once you pass the point of actually knowing the rules and how things work, you've got a chance.
Interesting.
I find that really interesting.
The double or nothing and the Heads Up Hold'em.
Yeah, but particularly Double Up. I mean, the thing with Double Ups is they look simple. If you're a new player, you think, oh, well, I've only got to finish in the top 3. Ours are 6 hands, by the way. You've only got to finish in the top 3, and I'll double my money. But you don't necessarily understand the strategy that goes into that. I mean, you've kind of got to know ICM to understand how to play double ups. You've got to know that it can be right to fold pocket aces on the bubble, stuff like that.
Fold pocket aces?
Yeah.
Not gonna be able to do it. No, man, I ain't folding pocket aces. I'm all in.
But you know what I mean, right? It's not it's not intuitive for a new player at all to be folding pocket aces on the bubble. So or whatever it might be, even if it's, you know, a less clear-cut decision like that. So I think that's why, because the strategy is so unintuitive, I think that's why new players struggle in that game.
Interesting. Guys in the chat, I'll get a couple questions from you guys out there if you have anything to ask, which I'm sure you do, and then we'll wrap it up here. What do you got planned for anything to look out for players out there over the next couple months?
So we've just finished a promotion called Loosen Up, which was about getting people to play a little bit more interesting style at the tables. You know, it was an achievements-based promotion, and you could earn money for completing various tasks. You had to play loose. You had to win pots with 7 deuce. You had to bluff all the way to the river and things like that in order to earn these prizes in this promotion. That was quite a cool promotion, and has done well for us as well. We've got an edition of Blazing Cannon coming up. We've got football-themed Blazing Cannon. Play Blaze Poker, which is our version of Rush Poker. If you play Blaze Poker, win 20 pots, you get the opportunity to play the bonus game where you can win up to €100. And it's football themed, and it's timed with Euro 2016. What else have we got coming up? We've got Universal Championship of Poker again later in the year in September. That's going to be really exciting.
Why couldn't you call it something else? I don't understand. Everything's a championship of poker. Why couldn't you come up with another name?
Ours is the Universal Championship of Poker.
Yeah, you just changed the first name of it, though. You just changed the Universal. Instead of World or Spring, you made it Universal.
We took it to its logical conclusion.
Can't there be another word besides championship? Let me go to this. Let me go to this thesaurus here real quick. This can't be set in stone. This name. Hold on. Let me go to thesaurus. This word real quick. Champion. Hold on a second. Championship. I just want to look. I just want to see what else is out there. Maybe, as you said, it's the optimal choice. It's the optimal thing. Crown, showdown. I suck. Winner take. No, it sucks too.
We've already got a showdown. We've got a Sunday showdown every week, which is our big Sunday tournament.
Crowning achievement. The Universal Crowning Achievement Series. You know,
maybe we'll call our spring series that next year.
I mean, yeah, I'm just like, come on, Nick, it's this Super Solar Poker Championships. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you should do a competition where people submit names. I mean, whatever, man. I'm just.
I'll tell you what, come up with a better name. Come up with a better name. Tweet it to me, and we'll do a spring championship next year with that name.
Please, someone come up with a better name besides something championship, please. Matt House says, how can I get sponsored by Microgaming?
That's a good question. You're just going to have to write to them all and offer your services. I think it's a lot harder to get a sponsorship than it used to be. You've really got to work for a sponsorship now. You've got to be someone like Jamie Staples.
Jimmy,
you know, who's out there creating interesting content on Twitch. He's really fascinating to watch, by the way. I really love his stuff. Yeah, you've got to be somebody like that, really. In the past, I mean, I've worked with the pros a bit over my career, and there were some that wouldn't show up on time to an event. You know, they'd be paying them $80,000 a month, for example. Some of the highest paid pros, $80,000 a month, and they wouldn't show up on time, or they would sleep in and not show up at all. You know, I think one of the reasons that you see someone like Liv Marie so much, for example, is that she's reliable. She shows up on time for her appointments. She does the job which is expected of her, and she's grateful for it, right?
And she's awesome as a person, and she's very, very captivating.
That also, but she does the job. She earns the paycheck, right? And these days you've got to be one of those people.
Well, also
just gets a paycheck and just doesn't show up on time.
Also, it's actually a disadvantage to be a sponsored player on your site because you can change your names every 30 days. And if everyone knows who you are and other people are changing their names, and you're playing higher stakes or playing any stakes, you have a severe disadvantage in terms of from a competitive standpoint.
That's true. But of course, you're going to be one of the best players if you're a sponsored pro. So you'll be able to soak that up.
I think you're actually costing yourself a little bit too much big blind per 100 using this strategy. But depends on what the sponsorship deal is, I suppose. My buddy Nick Frame, what's up, puppy? Friend of the podcast. Former guest of the podcast says, can he speak on how safe micros is to play on for players' funds, etc.? Okay, so the best thing I can say there is I wrote a really long blog about how we protect player funds. So if you go on our website, mpn.poker/blog, and it's one of the earliest ones, I wrote in detail about the things that we do in terms of due diligence, for example, to ensure that operators are liquid. I write about the network rules. It's all covered in there. There's even statements from all of the operators that were on the network at the time, which explain how they protect player funds. So you can go there, you can read those statements, and you can make your own mind up about which of them is the safest to play on. Cool. Okay. Yeah, I think that's the best thing. Is to go read that blog. I go into it in a lot of detail. Okay, you're talking about Jimmy Stapler, aka Jamie Staples. If you kind of look like him. If he hit the gym for a little bit, I just start working out a little bit more. You kind of look like him, honestly. I can see it. You got the light complexion. You got the cheeks are a little bit rosy, Jimmy Stapler style. The cheeks are rosy because I'm sat next to a radiator and I got sunburned this weekend. I got sunburned in the Isle of Man. That is saying something. Does it rain there a lot? 1 week of sun this week. Does it rain there a lot? Yeah, so we're right. For those who don't know where it is, we're right in the middle of the Irish Sea, in between Ireland and Wales and the United Kingdom, basically. So we get like all of the worst weather from Ireland and Wales in the UK. But it's pretty similar. Like anyone who lives in England will know what it's like. We've had a nice week, but this week it's going to rain pretty much all week now. Wow. I actually have an Isle of Man bucket list related thing, and so I've heard that one of the legends of online poker, Esai Scheinberg, can be spotted in the Isle of Man on a weekly basis. My idea was I was going to go to the Isle of Man and try to find Esai Scheinberg and just want to talk to him. I don't even want to get him on the pod. I just want to talk to him. I want to shake his hand. I want to give him a hug. I just want to give him like maybe a kiss in the cheek or something like that. That's one of my goals. That's on my bucket list to meet Esai Scheinberg for sure.
Yeah, well, yeah, I understand he still lives here. I saw him in the street a couple of months ago, actually, in Strand Street, which is the shopping street. It's basically the main shopping street in the Isle of Man.
The only shopping street?
Yeah, I mean, we're a small population. We've got 86,000 people on this island, so it's not big. But yeah, I saw him on the main shopping street a couple of months ago. You probably, if you go to I don't know, the restaurant at the Regency Hotel, that's probably your best chance of running into him.
No, okay. Yeah, I've heard. I've been in touch with people who gave me a couple of locations, and allegedly he may have watched a podcast or two in lifetime, according to certain people I've talked with as well too. So shout out to him if he's watching right now. And we want to get him on the podcast in 10 years from now. That's our goal. We want to get him on the pod in like 10 years. So we'll see what happens here. I think that's all Alex, we got. What do you say?
That's a lofty goal.
I'm aiming for it, man. And we want to get Mr. B himself on the podcast one day. Mr. Bazoff, man. We got to get him on the pod at some point in time.
Oh, I think, yeah, that let me know if you do. I'll definitely watch it.
Give me 6 years. Once he purchases the current market leader Amaya outright and then sells it for like $75 billion more than they bought it for, then we'll get him on the pod. You know, we'll get him. He can talk about it then. So, all right, I'll give a couple more shouts before we go and wrap it up. No CCS, what's up, buddy? Puppy, Wim, Al Heyman, y'all still here? Charisma 91, Charlie Lua, Charlie. I don't know how to say that name. Brad. No, not gonna be able to do that. Let me see. My boy Tyler Benz, what's up, Tyler? And who else didn't I give a shout to earlier? Matt Howe, Walter, even though you were mean to somebody. Miguel Sanchez, Moracita, what's up, man? Let's see. Gills, Jackson. Any shout outs you want to give out there to anybody, Alex? Might be watching, creeping from the background?
No. I don't think anybody tunes into this to see me, really.
No, I think that's not true. I'm sure like the people who are involved on the operator side of things probably were interested in watching this for sure.
Okay, shout out to any of our MPN operators who are watching this. Hey.
Would you say Poppy?
No.
Oh.
Should I?
You should say it, yeah. Ben, my boy Ben Hellstrip, what's up, Ben? Shout out to Joey's hair. Shout out to my hair for sure. Silver. Shout out to Chris Coys. What's up, Chris? Matt House says, I love you, Alex Scott. All right, I think that's it. So people want to send you anything, they can send it to you on Twitter at Alex Scott 7. What is it? 72 off. Your favorite poker hand? What is it?
Alex Scott 7 deuce offsuit. Yeah.
At Alex Scott 7-2 offsuit, or they can email you potentially. Can they?
Yeah. Work at alexscott.eu.
Work.
Yeah. Then it goes to my work.
Okay. Work at alexscott.eu. If you have any ideas, suggestions, and want to know anything.
Yeah, keen to hear them.
I'll be back with a podcast on Friday with a young man that goes by the name Dipthrong, who is, I believe, very popular in the poker tournament community. And I also know he likes to make up words, and that's one of my favorite things to do, aka Mark Herm. And that'll be on Friday. And then next Monday, I believe, we'll be having on Max Greenwood, who is also a longtime poker player, tournament player, plays all the high stakes events. And that'll be next Monday. Alex, you have any podcast suggestions? Who would you like to see on?
Who would I see? Well, Esai Scheinberg would be a very interesting one, all right.
Okay, let's go for 2 people I may actually be able to get on realistically over the next couple months.
Do you know who I'd like you to get on? I'd like to get Max Silver on the podcast.
My boy Max Silver. Well, he wanted to come on, but you know, I don't know about this whole program he made. It seems a little bit too strategic for my liking on the pod. So I told him that I just didn't feel right inside my heart having him on the podcast.
Fair enough. And the other person you could get on is the greatest poker player in the universe. He's a guy called Dimitri from Latvia. So I'll introduce you.
Okay, put me in touch with him. I'll get him on the pod. Why not? Yeah, of course. Let's get him on. Dimitri Latvia, who won the contest. Yeah, get him on. Let's do it, man. Yeah, that sounds cool.
Okay.
All right, guys, I'll be back soon. I'll be going to LA, I think tomorrow, going to the Survivor finale. If anyone watches a reality TV show with Anna Kate, poker player, had her on the podcast earlier in the year. And I'll be doing some LA type of stuff. And, I'm going to be getting out of line per usual. So follow on Snapchat. You have Snapchat, Alex? You one of those you Snapchatting anything?
I don't know. I feel like it's a thing for 16-year-old girls, but then I don't know. A lot of people seem to be using it now. Maybe I should get it. I'm just a bit. You know what,
Alex? I'm going to give you. I'll give you some things here. So Snapchat is destined to be one of the biggest social media platforms in the entire world in a very short period of time. It sounds like there's an opportunity for Microgaming to get on there and interact with the people who play poker on the site with some Snapchat specialized videos or potential, I don't know, promotions or competition. I don't know. There's something there though, Poppy. There's something there.
I'm sold. I'm going to download it right now.
And at the same, maybe if you have, you're married. You're married, right? You're married, right?
Yeah, I'm married.
Never mind. All right. I don't want to tell you what else. Snapchat, whatever. All right, guys, wrap it up. That's it. Peace out. Much love. Adios. Coramosa. Caramosita. Alex, thanks a lot, buddy.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Peace.